pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Scott will start us off.
Yeah, so we'd like to begin this evening with some recognitions. So I'd like to start by calling up the members of our high school culinary team who are here in the audience this evening, Darren Foster and Kevin Schott, and their advisors, Chef Dan Portalance and Patrick Baja. So if they could come on up, that would be great. Patrick said he would like to say a few words tonight, so he's we're gonna put him on the spot. So let's talk a little bit about their accomplishments first. So, you know, as a community as a whole, we're just totally impressed what Darren and Kevin have been able to achieve. So they won first place in the Pro Star competition and management competition at the state level. So they were the state champions. They went on and competed in the New England Championships, and then they competed in the national championships in Providence, Rhode Island. I had the pleasure of attending their presentation at the national championship, and they just did an outstanding job. It was impressive to watch them work. Their poise, their command of the subject, their knowledge, their presentation skills, the clear time and effort and energy that they had put in to this kind of culminating performance. And you guys have done it a few times. Obviously, you've done it at the state level, you've done it at the New England level. But really, this was the culminating performance of months and months and months of work. And that was really evident. It was really clear that you would put that type of dedicated commitment into this process. And that dedication paid off with them being named finishing in fourth place in the Nationals. And we tried to do a comparison to that a little bit. Because you think about it, really, every state had their own individual state Pro Star competition. And then the state winners got to go on to the Nationals. I believe 46 states were represented at the Nationals. And I think Darren actually had a number for Texas for me. I think it was Darren.
It was 120.
So Texas had 120 teams compete just for their state championship, and they won that state championship. And then they outperformed or rated higher than the Texas team that defeated 120 teams. And obviously, they probably could have given me the number of teams from each individual state, the number of people they competed against, but it ultimately was really probably thousands. So in the end, they finished in fourth place amongst thousands of management teams who entered this competition. And they really made the community proud. They made myself proud. They would have made all of you proud if you had the opportunity to go to Providence and watch them perform. So I'm going to ask them to talk a little about their concept, what they did. But before we do that, I also want to say this was in many ways a community effort. And I don't say that to take anything away from Darren or for Kevin, because obviously they did an outstanding job. But it was a community effort from, I know several local restaurants were very involved with working with them in terms of their management presentation, specifically Mamma Mia's. I know Mr. Salavona spent some time with them talking about marketing. I know that Mr. Portalance and Mr. Maha do a great job of having them connect into our area resources in Carver and in the community, and tapping into those resources to use their knowledge, to use what they have, the abilities they have, and transfer them and support them. And really, I can't think of a better way to approach a project than having our students tap into our community resources, take from those community resources, learn from them, improve their skills, improve their level to the point where Darren and Kevin were able to perform. So I just want, and I'm sure there's some pieces that I missed in terms of the community. So what other area community resources did you tap into besides Mamma Mia's? There was a couple other chefs who worked with you as well, correct?
Yeah, so we had Greg Whitmer from the 99s. He's the director of human relations and training, I believe, at the 99 restaurants. Vice president of, excuse me. And we had a few others. We had Chef Mushin, who was a old director of Cordon Bleu, the culinary school. And yeah, we Mr. Salavota himself, he came and helped us with our marketing plans. And yeah, just getting all the help from the community, like Mamma Mia's especially, they were a huge help with designing our posters, getting like our menu and things set up for our proposal. And just everything, it just all came together and also gave us kind of like some connections if we want to go into this business in the future.
Yeah. So if you can just give us a general give the community a general idea of what was your task, what did you have to do, and then what was the concept you came up with?
Okay, yeah. So basically what we had to do with this Pro Start program was we had to design a restaurant, write an entire business proposal, come up with 2 marketing tactics to market our overall restaurant, come up with a menu, and just we came up with the concept kind of in the beginning. It started off kind of weak, but then we obviously strengthened it. And so we just started it basically as kind of like a world cuisine restaurant. You know, you go to this place, you can get different cuisines from, say, Korea, India, things like that, rather than just staying limited to just one specific area of the world. And we also added this open kitchen kind of concept, so people could actually see their food being prepared in front of them, which kind of gives them like that better connection. And yeah, so honestly, the whole experience itself is just something I'm going to remember for a while. And we're obviously doing it next year because, I mean, we're going to be seniors next year. We want to finish it off, get that first place instead of fourth. But but yeah, so just overall, the entire experience is just something. It was amazing. It was really cool meeting all these people, meeting different people. I met Ted Allen. If any of you guys watched Chopped, I met him in the elevator, which is kind of awkward, but yeah, no, it was a great time, great experience.
And then you want to tell us a little about your restaurant you designed?
Yeah, so the
Give
rest.
us the pitch, the 1-minute pitch.
Yeah.
So essentially what the restaurant was is it's international cuisine all cooked over an open flame. And it all started because we were having, it was ribs or something like that, or it might have been grilled chicken. And I went into their fridge and I saw Korean barbecue sauce. Now I said to myself, now wouldn't it be interesting if we could see what it would be like if we found a restaurant where every country's barbecue is represented and you can get anything from anywhere in the world. And then it eventually evolved into all cooking over an open flame. So it's not just the barbecue. It's you can see the food being prepared. You can get that connection with the food. And even if it's chicken parm, we're not going to be deep frying the chicken. Of course, we could if we wanted to, but we're just doing it in our way, the Bry way. Now, the name of the restaurant is Bry, and the word Bry is a South African word. There's 23 languages spoken in South Africa, and there's only one word that means the same thing in all of them, and that's the word Bry, which means to cook over an open flame. So that was the concept and the philosophy that we brought to our restaurant.
So, Mr. Portland, Mr. Maher, if there's anything you guys want to add?
All right, get up. Well, we've had teams 10 out of the last 11 years I've been here. We've been fortunate. The management team, this is our 5th state title. We've had 2 culinary teams that won the state title and competed in the nationals. This is, prior to this time, we've had 3 teams reach top 10 in the nation. And when you look at schools, there are 3,500 schools that do the Pro Start curriculum in the United States, along with the Department of Defense. That's a lot of schools. And we mentioned it before, we're probably one of the smaller ones. You know, you walk in and you meet some of these chefs, and they talk about, you know, their $2 million kitchen that's getting renovated 5 years later. It's like, you know, but I never looked at that like, why me? I looked at it as I'm fortunate enough to have kids that want to work. For Darren and Kevin to take 4th in the nation, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of hours. They committed to this. And that's the beauty of the Carver kid. When the Carver kid wants something, he or she will get it, because they're going to work for it. In the past, I could get a kid to win the state title. It took me till I got Mr. Maha to get him to the top into the top 10. And now it took me to realize that the 2 of us still couldn't do it. So we did reach out to Mama Mia's. And besides the time, Mama Mia's gave us their management team for about 10 to 15 hours, not counting emails. They also paid for a part of our proposals. And that's a company that cares about the city of Carver. And it was really important for us that they did that, and I appreciate everything they've done. But then in the building itself, Mr. McLean, endless hours with the kids. And it could be just passing in the hallway, asking a question. The staff in the building. Because
to practice and practice, believe me, I don't want to hear the concept ever again. But for other teachers to come in and give critique and have a conversation with them, I do believe, and people think it's me, politician, that these kids are successful because it starts at the elementary school with the teachers pushing these foundations and talking to them as adults. And then when we get to the high school, other teachers are pushing the presentation, the research, the writing. And again, having a conversation with them. People are like, oh, chef, you did a great job. I just get that cloth and I brush the diamond. The diamond was started off in the kindergarten, and they're both started here in kindergarten. So that they're homegrown, which is even better. They kind of say they want to take first place. Take first place can be a lot more work, but those two gentlemen could do it. So, and again, I also want to say, before I go anything, I got to thank the administration for all those years. Whether when Mr. Neef hired me as principal, when he was principal, Ms. Sorrell, they've always supported the program. So it makes it a lot easier for me to do this job and to share my experiences with the kids. So thank you.
And I mean, this is in my mind, this is the epitome of something I say all the time, which is our students will rise to the expectations that are set for them. And if we challenge our students to do great things, they will do great things. And Dan and Pat, I want to thank you for challenging our kids to do great things. I think it's the challenge that you've laid out for them that's helped them rise to this level of success.
So I just want to add a couple of things, is that it still is such an honor and a privilege for me to be able to still be working with the town of Carver, with the Carver school system, with the kids in the system that I've spent so many years at. So that is just, again, it's just a real honor and a privilege to me. These guys, these two boys, and again, the magnitude of this, I don't think can be overstated, where you have, here's two boys from Carver that come up with an idea, work their tails off, literally, put in so much effort and work, and they even listened to us a couple of times as we maybe suggested some things that we've been there before, and to bring that up and to place fourth in the nation, and you've heard the numbers and stuff, but that's just the magnitude of this. Fourth in the nation, two kids from Carver. I don't, how do you get any better than that?
First in the nation.
Yeah, well, that's coming. That's coming. One of the other things is, and they did the work. They had to do the work. But one of the other things is this program doesn't happen without this guy. That's for sure. He's got the vision, he's got the effort, he's got the leadership that evokes these guys to do what they do. And I think one of the nicest things that I saw, I've been at the Nationals before, but this year it was local, and the parents were there. The parents of these boys were there. And as the boys are there and as they're presenting and, getting their honors and so forth, I was looking at the proud parents. It was just unbelievable to see the looks on their faces. And they said, there's our boys up on the stage in a national competition. I just thought it was, that was just beyond it, to see that. So we would look forward to doing this again next year. And what place are we going to be in next year? First. They told me first. But again, it just was such an honor and a privilege for me is to still be associated with the Carver schools and be able to work with the kids. So I thank you all for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think you guys are looking at entering one of the most competitive fields there are in business. So this effort that you're saying is taken to get to where you're at is definitely a good step in what you're going to need to do to succeed in that business.
And I think you're even proving some of those qualities that you're looking for in a place like Mamma Mia's and the restaurants that succeed and those businesses that succeed. They're part of their community. They're not just quality food. They become part of what's happening. And congratulations on how far you've gotten. And we'll be here next year to see your first place victory.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's on you, yeah?
All right.
Till we.
So, Darren and Kevin, thank you very much. Congratulations. Congratulations, and we'll look forward to first place next year.
Yeah, very much so.
That's terrific.
The second recognition we would like to do tonight, and maybe we're going to put Jenna on the spot, is several of our student council representatives were able to be recognized or awarded positions at at the Spring Leadership Conference for CMASC, in which they're going to have regional offices. So we think that that's great. Unfortunately, Student Council Advisor Mr. Tresca was unable to be here tonight. He had a family emergency. He was actually out of the district today. He was out of school today. And Mr. Tresca received the John Jack Scanlon CMASC Advisor of the Year Award, which is actually also a tremendous honor for him. So I see Josh Kennedy is here. So Josh, if you can come on up, that would be great. I don't see Sam Santos, and Jenna is here. So Josh, come on up. And Jenna, I don't know if you want to join. Sure, you can join Josh over there. So at the annual Spring Leadership Conference, student leaders earn top honors from 39 regional schools. President Sam Santos, who also served as regional vice president, was the recipient of the John Schrader Leadership Spirit Award. Sam's not here this evening. Spirit Coordinator Jenna Sweeney was elected as the 2018-2019 Regional Webmaster, so she has a regional position. And Delegate Josh Kennedy was elected as the 2018-2019 Regional Publicity Coordinator. And as we said, Mr. Tresca was recognized as the Advisor of the Year. So Jenna and Josh, the committee would like to congratulate you for your elected positions. And why don't you tell us a little about the conference and what you're looking forward to in terms of your new elected positions within the council?
I think we're both looking forward to it, very much. As webmaster, I'm in charge of, the website, which is something, I'm not, too familiar with, but, because I wanted to serve. So Josh decided that he wanted to run for CMAS Publicity Coordinator, and, according to, the Constitution, I can't run for, a position unless it's, delegate or webmaster, and I thought that it'd be cool, hey, I'll just learn how to make a website. And then, they saw my efforts, I'll just, randomly learn how to make a website, I'm that committed, I guess. So that's how I got webmaster. How did you get PubCo, Josh?
It was a little nerve-wracking at first, considering there's 38 other schools I could be running against for this position. So when we got to we have 3 conferences a year, one in the fall, winter, and spring. So our spring one was at Duxbury High. So the school itself was intimidating in comparison to Carver. So we had to get up on the stage in Duxbury in front of the 38 other schools and deliver a speech, and then the schools would vote on who they would want to win. So I did win, and I am very thankful for that. It was very intimidating.
Do you have to do any pre-publicity before the conference in terms of your being a delegate?
Yes,
Yeah.
so they encourage, so before you run, you can campaign for yourself through social media outlets. So I mainly use Twitter and Instagram for myself. And then all the delegates running for something have a theme. So mine was be a leader, buzz, like an insect. So that's what my theme was centralized around. And then when we attended the conference, all the Carver kids wore little bee things, like antenna. And then I had them all wear yellow and black to kind of represent that. So as the conference went on, they could campaign for me as they interacted with other students. So that was that.
So you were very good at getting publicity for yourself.
Yes.
There you go.
Shows you'll be great as the publicity coordinator for the Regional CMAS Conference. So obviously, it's a tremendous accomplishment that we went off to the conference with, as we said, 39 regional schools, and that 4 of our students either received an elected position or received an award. So that's impressive for our student council. And, Jenna's here on a regular basis kind of updating us all the great work that student council's doing. And I think that it's great that that work is being recognized on a regional basis because our student council really it's very active. It's a very active council, has a lot of kids involved. They work very hard and really represent the school and the community really well. And Jenna and Josh do that as well. So we're excited about having so many students recognized. So Jenna and Josh, while you're here, you want to give us the student council update as well?
Sure, I'll go grab it.
Tell us what's going on with student council. And then in your regionally elected positions, how often do you meet?
I think it's about once a month in Marshfield, and then that's just kind of planning out what we're going to do at all three of the
So
conferences.
you basically are in charge of organizing and running the three conferences,
Yeah.
the leadership team. It's great. That's a great experience as well, to have that level of organization.
So for our student council update, we've officially elected our new executive board for the 2018-2019 school year. Our president is Claire Manning. Our vice president is Josh Kennedy. Our secretary is Maya Magnuson. Our publicity coordinator is Brenna Weston. Our spirit coordinator is Jenna DeLuca. Our historian is Bella Tabaji. And our delegates are Brenna Lagerquist and Jenna Sweeney. Josh Kennedy and I were both selected to be on the 2018-2019 CMASC board, as you just discussed. National Association of Student Councils annual conference being held in Minnesota this summer is quickly approaching, as myself and Delegate Brenna Lagerquist will be attending. For the first time this year, Student Council ran registration for students to walk 10 miles at the Walk for Hunger to earn community service hours. The registration fee alone was $15, like you had to pay just to like be able to walk and like get the bib to like earn hours. And like not including, so we had 31 students on the bus, but not including the students from Carver who didn't take the bus and who also like donated extra money. Like by minimum, we donated $465. Like if people just who went on the bus and just who donated $15, like we all together $465. I'm assuming more kids had donated money and there are kids who didn't take the bus. So we'd also like to thank you for recognizing all of our awards and achievements at Spring CMASC. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, so Josh and Jenna, congratulations on your elected positions. I'm sure you're going to serve the CMAS board well.
Great,
So
thank you.
congratulations and thank you.
Thank you.
I like hearing stories like that.
So we move to reorganization, which means we need to make a motion.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
I would accept the motion to move through at least the first three positions, and then we can discuss where we go from there with subcommittees.
I'd like to make a motion to keep James O'Brien as the chairperson.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any questions, comments? All those in favor?
I
Aye. It's unanimous.
I'll make a motion to keep Ian Solovoter as vice chair.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous.
I'll make a motion to keep Stephanie Clafferty as the recording secretary.
Second.
A loud second for the recording
Graciously
secretary.
motioned and seconded. Any
She knows I
comments
wouldn't
there? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is it 3-1 maybe, or? We'll go unanimous with that one.
She's so good at it, though.
Not that Anne Marie would agree. but I absolutely.
So just on the subcommittees, this is the will of the committee. You could certainly bundle this all together and take one vote to maintain the current subcommittees, or you could certainly take them up one by one. I think there is a value in terms of maintaining the current subcommittees, especially since we're specifically involved in negotiations at this time with all of our bargaining units. To change that up, I think, may not be a great move, but obviously that's the will of the committee in terms of what you like to do with that.
I agree. I would like to make a motion to keep the subcommittees as they currently are.
Agree. Second. Oh,
Motion made and seconded. So I think, as you said, it makes the most sense, especially considering the positions we're in right now. So all those in favor?
aye.
Aye. Unanimous?
Well, that was smooth.
So then we move on to, well, welcome back,
Yeah, that's good.
right? Comments from the general public? Nobody's diving to the floor.
No movement to the mic.
So we will go for comments from the APC. Tom, how you doing?
How's everyone tonight?
The sun
Good,
came
thank you.
out.
Right? A lot of exciting stuff going on here at Carver with all the awards, and then also the field pass. That's
Yes.
That's great news,
Already-
too, for the
already-
community.
Already in progress.
yeah.
Yeah.
was
You
at
gotta
the
work on it?
School Saturday. I saw it. All the constructions have gone on, moving
Excellent.
fast. So good stuff. I'll be brief. School year's flying by. You know, we're all busy and different meetings and whatnot. That being said, it'll be exciting. The Carver retirement parties this Thursday, so it'll be a good celebration. Last year was actually my first year ever attending that. I mean, it was a great event, and I think, speaking on behalf of the EAPC, I mean, it's great that we're able to contribute and to be a part of the whole event. Like I said, it's a really special event and to celebrate everybody's great careers. So that'll be it. And,
Thank
see you
sir.
later.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We've been updated by the student advisory representative already, so we will move on to approval of minutes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes from April 9th.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any changes, questions, comments? Nope. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the executive session minutes from April 9th.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Does that need to be stated as not to be released, or is it just a given?
That's a given.
Okay.
We have to vote to release them.
Okay. Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, moving on to reports from the superintendent. First, we have some personnel updates. We've had some hires. So I'm proud to announce that we've hired Gina Marie Rush as the new administrative assistant to the superintendent. As many people know, Gina served as my administrative assistant when I was the principal at the Carver Middle High School. And with the retirement of Mrs. Matrano, we look forward to Gina moving up to central office. We've also hired 3 teaching positions for open spots for next year. Reagan Whipple will be the new middle high school foreign language teacher. Excuse me. Replacing the retirement of Sue Spillane. Ben Tan will be the new Carver Elementary School music teacher, replacing the retirement of Deb Jokas. And Mary Guinea will be the new middle high school science teacher, replacing Amy Politano, who has taken a position with her family up in Maine. She's moving up to Maine. So those were the 3 open positions we had, and they have been filled. So that's a personnel update for
Do we
this
have
month.
one more meeting?
I have one more thing.
One more meeting.
I'm sad about it.
Yes, mixed emotions.
I am. Yep,
You're going to be greatly missed.
thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Day on the Hill. So Brad and I attended the Day on the Hill on Wednesday, April 25th. The keynote speakers included Noah Berger, who's the president of the Mass Budget and Policy Center, Representative Aaron Vega, and Senator Sal DiDomenico. MASC has outlined 11 public policy priorities, and I just want to review some of those priorities that I think are key for the Carver Public Schools in terms of funding. And these are all issues we've talked about before, so there's nothing new here. And that's, in some ways, it's unfortunate there's nothing new here because these priorities have kind of been in place for the last couple of years, and it just hasn't seen a lot of movement on them. Though there's been a little bit of movement over the past couple of weeks in terms of some of the budget proposals coming out of the Senate. So I'll give you an update on where those things stand. The first public priority for the Mass Association of School Committees is funding revision for Chapter 78 to reflect the 21st century needs. And their push is to implement the recommendations of the Foundation Budget Review Commission we've talked about many times, saying that ultimately schools are underfunded, or Chapter 70 is underfunding the schools because it hasn't kept up with the growth of healthcare costs and special ed costs, primarily. That's a very basic summary of what the recommendations of the Foundation Budget Review Commission is. The last budget to come out of the Senate Ways and Means Committee, and it was passed by the Massachusetts Senate, does begin at a very small level to implement some of those recommendations. They actually have a phased plan over 7 years to increase the funding to match what is recommended by the Foundation Budget Review Commission. So the Senate voted one-seventh of the shortfall. What that actually means for us is not a lot. So they actually sent out an analysis for the Carver Public Schools of if the House, I keep saying the House, if the Senate's budget was passed, how would that affect or change our Chapter 70 funding? And it really wouldn't. And we've talked about this before because we're held harmless and we're actually below what our student ratio is for our pupils, that we need to see some growth in population. So even if that piece was implemented, that would not bring any additional funding to the Carver Public Schools for next year. That doesn't mean if they actually kept that plan over 7 years and did 1/7 of the of what is needed to meet that gap, that we wouldn't see some change over the next 7 years. So that's kind of the Senate proposal, is that they take it in small chunks over the next 7 years to meet the funding requests of the Foundation Budget Review Commission. We'll see where that goes. But in terms of if the Senate budget was to pass, which is a little different than the House budget and the governor's budget. So that's where the state is right now. The governor's presented his budget, the House approved their budget, the Senate's approved their budget. The Senate's budget is the most friendly towards the schools. And so when it goes to committee, when they go to a final vote, hopefully some of the ideas in the Senate budget would go forward. And I'm going to hit some of the other pieces that are in the Senate budget. Also, in terms of Chapter 70, they say they'd like to see a $100 per year increase for each student, which we would get that money. Both the Senate and the House this year have agreed on $30. The governor's budget's $20. My guess is I think we'll see the $30 per student, which would be a $48,000 increase to the Carver Public Schools. We budgeted a $20 increase, I believe, at $32,000, so it would be an additional $16,000 in revenue, which is a small piece, but that additional would be there if it's reconciled and the $30 per pupil is passed. Second priority is full funding of special education circuit breaker. And the budget that the Senate passed does fully fund circuit breaker next year at 75% reimbursement. The House and the governor's budget do not, so they're going to have to reconcile that before they pass the final budget. But I think the Senate was making a clear statement that we need to fully fund circuit breaker. This is something we talk about often. And in their budget, they are funding circuit breaker at their budget proposal and the budget that the Senate passed does fund circuit breaker at 75% for next year. So hopefully that will go forward and happen. And then charter school funding reform. The state formula for reimbursing charter schools is flawed. We've talked about that a little bit at times. And even the flawed system is subject to annual appropriations. It has not been fully funded in 4 years. The Senate budget fully funds the flawed system. It doesn't change the system, but it does fully fund it. So the Senate in their budget this year kind of took on some of these pieces. They took on a piece of the recommendations of the Foundation Budget Review Commission. They took on funding circuit breaker at 75%. They took on it fully funding the charter school formula. Now, the House budget and the governor's budget do not. So when they go to reconcile, I'm not saying all these things are going to happen. And all these decisions will be made in the next month. By the end of June, we'll know. But hopefully, I think it does show a little bit of movement. And I also think the Senate has some clout. So I think the Senate budget and the Senate Ways and Means Commission has some clout at the State House. And I think there's a chance we'll see the 75% funding for circuit breaker, which would be beneficial to us. They did pass a supplemental budget for this year that upped circuit breaker reimbursement to 72%. Yes, I think they finally agreed on 72%. So that we are actually going to, our last circuit breaker payment for this year is going to be more than anticipated. So that's a benefit for us going into next year. So there are some small pieces here that are showing some benefits or some positive signs. And hopefully that trend will continue over the next few years. And I do think there is some value that the Senate has kind of taken on some of these priorities. And hopefully as we go forward over the next couple of years, we'll see the entire chamber and the budgets of the state kind of reflect these priorities.
When we speak about the charter school funding and we recognize it as a flawed system, is that recognized by them as something they're going to have to tweak, or is that, when we mention it as a flawed system, is that just how we're viewing it?
No, that's what they're saying. Agree with it, yeah.
That's what they're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not a flawed system, it's the fact that they don't fully fund it.
So is there something in place to revamp it going forward?
It's to fund it more. That's their,
Fund more a flawed
put
system?
more money into, let's say the liability itself is $1 million.
The flaw is that it's not funded
not fully
properly.
funded.
It's not the system itself
Okay,
is
gotcha.
flawed. The
Well-
flaw is that it's not funded properly.
And well, and also, I would also say though, I mean, when we had the whole charter school debate, there was a lot of discussion around the idea that charter schools are state schools that don't divert funding from public schools. The reality is they do divert funding from public schools. The first year you're reimbursed at 100%, but then after that, that reimbursement diminishes. So over time, there is a cost to the schools, and I think when it talked about a FLAW system from an advocacy standpoint, the Massachusetts Association of School Committees is saying maybe we need to look at the formula too. So A is a problem of they're not fully funding the formula as it currently exists, which is a problem. And this Association of School Committees would say, maybe we need to change the formula too and give a little bit more reimbursement back to public schools for the expenditures that goes to charter schools.
Charter schools are not held to the same accountability as public schools are. So the funding is there for them with the same formula that we're using, but the accountability is not the same. So that's a flaw right there. I'd also say that it seems like the Senate has picked up its steps, so if anybody's gonna be making phone calls or calling anybody, it would be getting on the phone now to our representatives, to the people that have not fully voted or vetted what they're gonna do. And this is the time to get in their ear and to make your voice be heard, so.
And on that, Brad and I did meet with Susan Gifford on that
Gifford,
day.
yeah.
So we did go and meet with her and talked a little bit about some of our funding priorities when we were up there for the day. So,
The two biggest
go
things
ahead.
for Carver are fully funding circuit breaker and the charter school reimbursement.
Yeah.
Chapter 70, we're a ways away from ever getting any money from that. But the two that will have a direct impact next year are charter school reimbursement and special ed circuit breaker.
All right.
Thank you.
Our next is, I want to do I was going to say an update, but it's not really an update. It's really an introduction. So, with the next generation MCAS exam, Massachusetts has developed a new accountability system. So, and this system is going to be in place for next year. I wanted to give the committee just a very brief overview introduction to the system, and then next year, as we start to see MCAS results, we'll go into some more detail about this. And there's a lot of fine detail within this system so really, I will say that tonight's presentation is really a global overview. It doesn't get into the fine details. I'll hint at some of the fine details, and I think next year, the details will actually in some ways make more sense when we actually get an accountability report that comes out and we can tie it to our students and talk about our data and our performance. Thank you. In December of 2015, the Every Student Succeeds Act was enacted, ESSA. ESSA replaced No Child Left Behind legislation in terms of accountability. ESSA requires states to include the following indicators in any accountability system. So basically, to receive the federal funding and to meet the requirements of ESSA, the states had to set up an accountability system that had these points. They had to have academic achievement based on annual assessments in ELA, math, and science, the MCAS exam. They had to have a measure of student growth, which for us will also be the MCAS exam. You had to look at graduation rates for high schools. That has to be part of your accountability system. You had to look at the progress and achievement of ELL students, and at least one measure of school quality, which is a little bit changed. That's a big change within this system. We're going to talk about this concept of school quality and how that's going to be measured. Okay. Again, very generic overview. If you're a non-high school, okay, you're going to have 4 accountability indicators. The indicators are achievement, student growth, ELL proficiency, and additional indicators of school quality. And how are those going to be measured? Achievement is going to be your MCAS scores. So your average scaled score in ELA, your average scaled score in math. In science, they're going to use what's called CPI, your Composite Performance Index. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this, but I'll give a basic summary of what CPI is. In essence, if you scored under the old system, I think it's going to make most sense to people to explain in the old system. If you had scored advanced in the past, you received 100 points towards your CPI. If you scored proficient, you scored 100 points towards your CPI. In essence, they're saying we wanted everyone to score advanced to proficient. And if you scored advanced to proficient, you got 100 points. Then if you're a little below that, you got 75 points. If you're a little below that, you got 50 points. If you're below that, you got 25 points. If you're below that, you got 0 points. And then they came up with an average. So basically, if you scored advanced proficient, that was 100 points. And it was a straight numerical average. They took every kid, saw what they scored, gave them a point value divided by the number of kids, and it was called the CPI. That's a little different than average scaled score. Because if you think about it, in theory, if everyone scored proficient, right on the line, 240, your CPI would be 100. But your average scaled score would be 240. But if you had 95% of your kids score 270, and 5% of your kids score 220, your CPI would not be 100, but your average scaled score would be higher than 240. Does that make sense? So in essence, there's a distinction between average scaled score and CPI. For non-high schools, which really is fifth and eighth grade science, they're going to use CPI instead of average scaled score as your achievement indicator. Student growth is going to be for ELA and math only, and you're going to look at your student growth percentage. In that percentage, they compare students' performances over a year. So what they do is they say, let's take every student who scored at this level, level A, and how did they score the next year? And you actually get compared to all the students who scored the same score as you the year before. That's how they develop your student growth. So you're not being compared against all students. You're being compared against the students who scored in the same range that you scored the previous year. And that's how they develop your SGP, your student growth percentage. ELL proficiency, student progress towards reaching proficiency in ELL. This requires that you have 20 students in your school, so the end number is 20. So actually ELL proficiency is not going to be used for us because currently we don't have 20 ELL students in either of our schools. It would not be a factor. So it changes the weight of achievement, student growth, and additional indicators of school quality. And then the last is for non-high schools, your indicator of school quality is student attendance. That's what the state decided. They want to see, in essence, you'll get a full score if all of your students in the school have an attendance rate above 90%. And then you'll lose points for students who do not have an attendance rate above 90%.
Are those excused absences or?
No, I think it's a straight number.
Straight number. That
Straight
doesn't
number.
seem right. I mean, seems
Straight.
like there could be a lot of variables in that
Yeah.
factor there.
It's what gets reported in your data.
You know, I mean, there's
Yep.
there's a lot of medical issues that may be occurring with certain students that
Yep.
are going to impact that.
And then at the high school level, it's very similar. Achievement, student growth, high school completion, ELL proficiency, and additional indicators. So the high school is a little more complicated in terms of what your accountability day is going to look like. Achievement's the same. It's your MCAS scores in ELA, math, and science. Your student growth is the same. It's your MCAS scores, student growth in ELA and math. High school completion, they're going to look at your 4-year graduation rate, your extended engagement rate, and your annual dropout rate. I think people understand annual dropout and 4-year graduation. 4-year graduation is percentage of people who graduate in 4 years. Annual dropout rate is in the school, grades 9 through 12, how many kids leave school. Extended engagement rate is your percentage of students who don't graduate in 4 years who remain in school. So if a student doesn't graduate in 4 years, in year 5, are they still attending your school? In year 6, are they still attending your school and attempting to earn a diploma? So you're going to receive, it's going to be a positive factor if your kid doesn't graduate in 4 years, so you get a little bit of a negative thing because their number is going to be lower for 4-year graduation rate. But you get a chance to get a bump back by keeping that kid in school, keeping them engaged. So your extended engagement rate is the percentage of kids who don't graduate in 4 years who are still enrolled in your school. ELL proficiency is the same, and again, we're not going to have 20 students at the high school, so we're not going to be factored on that one. And then this is the interesting one for high schools, besides the extended engagement rate, and attendance is your additional indicators. But the one they're going to put a lot of focus on as well is percentage of 11th and 12th grade students completing advanced coursework. So there's a push at the state level through the accountability system to say you need to be challenging your juniors and seniors and making sure they're taking advanced courses. Now, advanced courses doesn't only mean AP courses or IB courses. Certainly AP and IB courses count. It also means physics, chemistry, pre-calculus. So the state's actually establishing a list of
Criteria.
what is considered advanced coursework. And they're going to look at, we actually, and I don't even know if people realize that this happens, as part of our data accountability system, as part of what we have to submit to the state, we submit every student's schedule. Gets submitted to the state as these are the schedule of classes that students take. Kindergarten through grade 12, that data goes off to the state. So they're going to be looking at the junior senior enrollment. They're going to be taking this list of advanced coursework and doing a percentage of advanced courses that students are enrolled in. So obviously this is going to put, as the high school going into the future looks at its program of studies, they're going to have to look at this piece and say, what are we doing to extend students, to push them to be engaged in advanced courses? I feel like we do a pretty good job of that, but it's something we could also do better. And it's going to be part of the accountability system. Now, I don't go into this detail. This is where you get into the minutia of it. These things are not all going to count equally. So completion of advanced coursework is not going to weigh the same as your MCAS scores. The reality is a large portion of your overall success is still going to be your achievement, your ELA, math, and science MCAS scores, and your student growth. But these other factors are going to be put in. And when we get into the detailed system, next year when this comes out and we look at it in more detail, we'll give the breakdown of this is 5%, this is 10%, this is 15%, this is 40%, and look at that breakdown.
Well, I guess when we're talking about staffing and class sizes, you need to make sure the right offerings are there.
It's gonna, yes,
to-
it's gonna definitely make us look at that list of what the state identifies as advanced courses for juniors and seniors, and making sure we're doing everything we can as a community to offer those courses to students and have students be enrolled in them. So that, and I do think that's an interesting, obviously the state through the accountability system in some ways pushes an agenda. They're pushing an agenda here, and I'm not saying it's an agenda I disagree with. They're saying we want to see your juniors and seniors in high school taking a rigorous load, rigorous coursework. We want to see them being challenged, and I agree with that standard, and so I do think it's a good thing. But I think it's something that we're going to have to look at going forward, is comparing that list of advanced coursework, looking at our program of studies, looking at what we're able to offer at the high school to make sure that we're able to offer those students the appropriate rigor and challenge that the state's looking for through the accountability system.
But this accountability does not apply to charter schools, correct?
No, it does. It does. Yep.
Same accountability?
Yep. Same accountability system. Does not apply to private schools.
To private schools.
Does not apply to private schools. Charter public funded schools do have to take the MCAS exam. They are rated in this accountability system. Now, another big change in the system is there's a real focus on closing achievement gaps. And what they're going to do, in addition to meeting your targets for the indicators in the slides I showed before, they're actually going to look at the performance of your lowest performing 25% of students. And this group is going to count for 50% of your overall accountability score. Because the idea is they want to say, we want to look at your students who are struggling and make sure that you're pushing them to achieve. You're pushing them to grow. So every school has a lowest 25% of performers. No matter how you perform, you have a lowest 25% of performers. Identified from a cohort of students who are enrolled in the school for more than 1 year. So the student has to be in the school for at least 2 years to be counted as lowest 25%. You can't have someone move in halfway through the year and have them count in your lowest 25%. And performance of the lowest 25% counts about 50% is a generic number. It's around there of the overall calculation in the system. So again, the state has an agenda. The agenda is to say, you need to look at your students who are struggling in school and doing everything you can to assist them. So it's kind of a push on both ends. It's a push on juniors and seniors, making sure they have access to rigorous coursework and a challenging curriculum. And then it's also a push on, let's look at your students who are struggling the most in school and make sure that you're doing everything you can to make sure that they succeed.
Yeah, there seems to be a special education requirement in here, though, or something that would seem to skew this a little bit. I don't know how to phrase what I'm trying to say, but it seems like, you know, if you have a larger population of students on IEPs or students that are involved in special education, that's gonna tend to be your lower scores, right?
And but they're gonna look at those students, and Meredith, you look like you wanna say something. So
Nope.
No, go ahead.
You want me to answer
yeah,
that?
Yeah,
I think for
you
those
jumped to the mic, so I'll let you answer it.
for those measures, they're really going to look at growth percentage, so whether or not we're hitting our growth targets. So
Which is exactly what I was gonna say.
yeah, I know that it sounds silly, but the expectation is not that everybody is proficient and gets to advance. The idea is no
Right.
matter where you are, that you're making at least a year's worth of progress. So independent of kind of what you start out with, if you are labeled special education or high needs or economically disadvantaged or anything like that, they look at last year's performance, how a student performed last year, and then how they perform this year.
Right.
And they're really trying to measure that,
Growth.
right, that annual growth. And
But you're still
So it's
making
not a straight
25%,
score, right?
50%. They're still taking 25% and making that 50%.
Absolutely.
right, the only thing that I will say is that this is what we expect the state, well, this is what the state is proposing to the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, but it won't be ratified until the June 26th meeting. That's when the board will vote on it. But for all intents and purposes,
You could see some changes in this proposal, and this proposal's actually gone over, has had some significant changes to it made over time. We originally had, Meredith actually arranged for someone from DESI to come out and make a presentation to the Assistant Superintendent's Group, which Meredith is part of and helps coordinate. And it was actually, we held the presentation here in Carver, and what was presented that day is much different than what's here now. So they've been getting a lot of feedback over the past really 2 years, year and a half. But I will say that June is awfully close, and this is their
Yeah.
final proposal. This is what's going to the board. And it's possible that it won't be ratified the way it is, but my sense is that they're going to look at that, because ESSA does require that you look at improving students' performance.
And I understand their intent there. I just don't necessarily agree with that last part, because I think you're skewing the data. Really.
Yeah, and then, like anything, data is data.
Right.
And like that was a profound statement. And ultimately, it's going to be the committee and the superintendent and to look at the accountability system and take what we need to take from that data in terms of our overall performance. So we're going to have the opportunity to look at our lowest 25%, see how they performed in comparison to other districts, and make some assessments about that. But ultimately, I just don't, it's something that gives us an opportunity to be reflective, and we don't have to view it as punitive. It gives us an opportunity to be reflective on our performance and make that comparison.
To me,
other
that puts
districts.
a lot of pressure on our special education team and the staff, I would think. It puts a lot of extra weight on them, because that generally tends to be an area of lower scoring and lower performance. And then I get the growth. I'm glad they moved from achievement to growth. But I still think you're putting a lot of pressure. I don't like that piece of that.
Yeah, and it's something we have to look at, because obviously, if it's part of the accountability system, we're going to look at how are our lowest 25% performing and what are we doing to support them. And just like we're saying that if it's part of the accountability system that we have rigorous, challenging coursework for our juniors and seniors, we're going to look at our course offerings and try to meet that. And that, that's going to have some financial, eventually as we look at budgets and planning and those types of things, it's going to have impacts.
can I add one more thing?
Absolutely not.
Every school, they're going to look at every school's bottom quartile.
Yeah.
Or, so, and just like it says, every school has a lowest 25% of performers. So I think to some degree, they're trying to level the playing field between districts that are kind of perennial heavy hitters and those that might currently be considered level 1 districts. They're saying it doesn't matter whether you are the best district in the state or, a school that's in receivership. We're going to look at the bottom 25% of every school and really look at where that growth is. I understand your concerns and share them, but I think that that's the aim behind it.
State doesn't aim very well.
So, the categorization of schools. So in the end, you're going to receive a level. The current system has 5 levels, levels 1 through 5. The interesting part was when I went to the presentation from the state, they said, "Look, we got rid of our 5 levels," and they said, you know, it's right now it's a vertical system, 1 to 5, and it's ranking, and you have a level 1 school and a level 5 school, and then I looked at their presentation and I said, "You've just taken your levels, and instead of being vertical, they're now horizontal." They go across this way, but really, they would argue that's not true. So you're going to be put in one of 2 categories. So they would say there's only 2 levels, but within the 2 levels there are breakdowns. So if you look, there's actually 5 sub-bullets there, which could be 5 levels. So you'll be identified as a school without required assistance, and they're estimating that 85% of schools will be identified as a school that doesn't require assistance from the state. And then within that group, there's going to be 3 subgroups. You're going to be identified as a district that's meeting targets, partially meeting targets, or not meeting targets within the subgroup of schools without required assistance. Then the second category is schools requiring assistance, which obviously means the state's going to be involved with those school districts. They're estimating it's going to be about 15%. And within that group, there'll be 2 subgroups: focused, targeted support and broad, comprehensive support. So, you know, in essence, they're saying the system is less punitive. It's less of the demarcation of a level 1 to a level 5. In essence, we're really going to identify schools as your school doesn't require assistance from the state. You're doing okay, you're moving forward. Maybe you could be a little better because you're only partially or not meeting all your targets, but you're okay. But there's also this focus group of schools who do require assistance. So the DESE's really promoting it as it's a 2-level system. But as I said, you could look at it, and if you look at it horizontally, it says schools without required assistance with 3 subgroups underneath it, and then schools requiring assistance with 2 subgroups under it. So if you cut across, it's 5. So I'm not saying it's going to be the same breakdown as levels 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
It's a little more gray, but it's the same concept.
Yeah, it's a little bit of the same concept. And the takeaways, and as I said, this was the goal. This was just to give a broad overview, let people know that there's going to be a new accountability system. This year we did not have an accountability status as kind of a reminder because we were switching back and forth between PARC and MCAS and Next Generation MCAS. So we were held harmless. There wasn't an accountability status for our schools or for the district, but next year there will be. You know, so using MCAS average scaled scores, we talked about that a little bit. Clear focus on the performance of the lowest 25%. Added chronic absenteeism and completion of advanced coursework in grades 11 and 12. Maintains 20 as the number for any subgroup to be counted. So sometimes we don't get counted in some subgroups because we don't have 20 students in a school that meet that criteria. And eliminated levels 1 through 5, that we just talked about that. Instead identifies schools requiring assistance and schools without required assistance. So those are kind of the big picture takeaways. And like, as I said, my goal this evening was just to let the committee know that a new accountability system is coming. This is the general broad scope, broad big brush ideas of what's going to happen. It's going to be we'll see if it gets approved in June, and then we'll look at this in much more detail when we look at our accountability rating based on our real data. So without that, I don't know if there's any other questions.
Will we know where we stand before, when is that in June? Is that before our meeting? Any chance?
No, June 26th. So we won't know till the summer to know if it's really where it stands.
But there technically is no accountability this year.
Yeah, right now we do not have accountability rating.
Right.
It's the first year they've done science on that.
So, well, just a couple weeks ago, we held our community safety forum. And what I wanted to put it on the agenda tonight just to give the members of the committee the opportunity to give their feedback, their thoughts. That was not a meeting of the school committee that evening. So it was not a public meeting of the school committee. So the school committee, I know you guys came and observed and watched, but didn't necessarily weigh in. And James and I had spoken and thought it would be appropriate to give members of the committee the opportunity to weigh in and give their thoughts as we kind of go forward as a district and think about areas that, and things that we want to do to improve safety within the schools. Right now, my focus in working with the chief, and I'll mention this, and obviously the committee can give me other priorities. But right now, the chief and I are working on, we're committed towards trying to get a second SRO, or at minimum increase the presence of officers through using details. We're also planning on moving forward with requesting funds from the finance committee for barricades, safety buckets, which would include tourniquets and quick clot. So right now, the chief and I are focused on those areas of having more of a presence in the school through hopefully a second SRO in the future, if not the second SRO through using detail officers, and then going forward with the safety buckets and barricades. And then after that, I'll turn it over to members of the committee who, if anybody wants to share any thoughts or ideas.
Andy?
Well, I was there, like all of you, and I thought it was very informational. I applaud the Scott here and our police department for giving a great presentation. And the community, even though there was a limited crowd, I think it didn't go out, advertising didn't go out as widely as we hoped, but it was a passionate crowd, I thought, and there was a lot of good ideas, like you see the questions here. And I think you're going on the track that I would like to see is have more personnel in the school. Both schools eventually have a SRO in both, at least one in each one, full time. The safety buckets, I think that was something that we'd spoke about before. And I think if you're going to request money from the finance committee on that, I think with the amount of items we're talking about, I would go more than just with one tourniquet. I'd go with, have two in the bucket, and if they can afford it, have more than just one. If they can afford it. And I think these are things we need to build into our budget the best we can, because no matter what the issues happen, what happens in this town, I would rather, you know me, I'm more of a fiscally conservative person, and I look at the budget, but it's not gonna matter if we have an issue with one of these schools if someone gets hurt. You know what I mean? That's the most important thing, is keep people safe and keep the kids and the staff safe. And so I would be for trying to find the funds to do that. But I thought it was a good event, and I think it was a great first step.
I agree with most of that. I think the event was really needed. I think that was what really came, and it was well done in the fact that I think there was a good community. Everybody got to say their piece and really get to an opportunity to not feel like they were told or talked at. They had the ability to have questions, get things answered that maybe they didn't know, or there was a lot of times where somebody would say, I didn't know that. And that's reassuring to know that that person was able to have that answered and go home and, maybe correct the person that had said the wrong detail to them. And knowing where Scott and the chief are, the directions they're going and the things that they're prioritizing are great. But there is there's no answers. Right. So it's just more to know that they're taking it and they're doing everything they can for it. I think the community can really appreciate that. So I thought it went quite well. I would hope we could do one maybe yearly, just to get an update. And some of those questions that were brought up, I was sitting with Brad and Mr. Schultz, and I would whisper over and say, that's a great question. Like, we really, that's something, and I'm not saying we haven't, Scott, you haven't thought about it, but when it was said, I remember thinking, wow, I'm really looking forward to finding out the answer to that. So, I thought that everything about the forum, why it was a good idea going in, proved to be true afterwards. So thank you, and obviously thank the chief for us.
Sorry. I agree with what both of you said. I would have liked to have seen some more parents there, but everyone that was there was actively engaged. And like you said, I think it was great that everyone was able to ask questions and really talk about their concerns. And it was great to hear. We know a little bit more than the general public about some of the systems that are in place and some of the things that occur. But I think it was great for people to have that opportunity to come learn and to see how dedicated our superintendent and our police chief are, and the police officers that were there. I mean, and the fire department is as well. How everyone is so dedicated to, trying to keep our school communities as safe as we can. And they're constantly evolving, and they're constantly, looking at new ways to improve things. And I wholeheartedly support going to the finance committee to ask them for money. There was one thing that was spoken about, were the deadbolts and then the floor bolt systems. Was that something that you were looking for a grant to fund, or is that something that we could?
The new elementary school has deadbolts in all of the classroom doors. At the middle high school, we were looking, and it is going to be one of the things we're going to bring to the finance committee, is to do a barricade or the bolt system in the floor
Okay.
as part of that funding.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that the bolts were included in that,
Yeah, it is.
in that barricade.
Yeah.
Yeah, I fully support love to see a second resource officer so we can have one in both schools, or filling it with details on the back end if we could. And I think it was great, and I think, like Andrew said, it would be great to have one again next year. So thank you.
Yeah, Andrew, I think I'd really support that idea of having another one, because I think one of the biggest things that came out of that is so much that's going on is really miscommunication. And with the age of the internet, I mean, so much information is out there, and it's really hard to know what to believe. And I think one of the takeaways from the meeting really is that as much as this may not make everybody happy, there's some information you can't have. It takes away from the safety aspect of what they're trying to do. I would applaud Scott and the chief, because I think their relationship has really helped move us in the right direction with the communication that they have and the relationship that they've built to sort of work together to move in that direction. I think it's been a huge benefit to what we're doing. I think it's sad we have to spend so much time talking about this and dealing with this, but it's a reality that we have to. But I think there are so many things, like so many people there, as all I heard them saying all night was, I didn't know that, like I had no idea. And when you look at the way the new elementary school is set up, and that SRO room right at the front office, there's so many options of things that we can have to really help and assist in that area with the creative ideas that came out, and some of the ideas that you had, and some of the things that, as we vet and move forward with some of those ideas, can work in a lot of different ways to benefit the community. I would definitely agree with, if the money's going to be invested, to get more than one tourniquet. I mean, while you can get what you can. Just a lot of recommendations that were made that night really implied that would be a beneficial thing to do.
And I
But-
think,
Go ahead.
Oh, no,
Go ahead, man.
as I said to Scott before, we weren't in an official meeting then, but just in conversation, if you're gonna go to the finance committee, go now, because if they might still have fiscal year 2018 monies left. So they might, I mean, I'm not sure if they do, I don't keep tabs on them anymore, but might be able to get some of that money, because after, July 1st goes into fiscal 19, then that money's has gone somewhere else. So I'm sure you didn't do that.
And our intention, the chief and I, our intention is to go before them, before the end of May.
Thank you.
Yeah, it just seems like so much, we're getting the calls on Connect Ed a lot, and it's just so much information out there. It can be really overwhelming for some people sometimes. So I think, nothing can ever be guaranteed, but I think that everybody in this district is doing as much as they can to make it as safe as they possibly can.
And I just want to say that, I mean, this was just a meeting, but it put us on the path to actually taking action as a town to keep the schools and the kids safe, and really keeping them safe. And this came from those letters being presented to us that really wouldn't have done anything. You know what I mean? And it just, we could have signed our name to two of them and said, oh yeah, look, we did something. But this is really doing something. And this is what I was talking about during that meeting when I was opposed to that, signing on to them. I'd rather do something real to keep the kids safe.
Well, it's not that it's not real, Andy, but I think one of the things that like the conversation that we came about, is a lot of what you're seeing in the media is happening throughout the nation. And one of the things the chief talked about is that Massachusetts gun laws are far stricter than most other places. And we already vet a lot of those things that are concerns in other areas.
Right.
So, some of the misconceptions of what you see in the media and what you think is the way it is isn't necessarily the fact. And I think these kind of meetings, I know that everybody walked out of that meeting learning something that they didn't know. Every single person that left there. So, if we do continue this and do hold more of these meetings, hopefully people will continue to come in and realize that it's an opportunity to learn something, but also you may not get the answers you want. Maybe you want to know something that jeopardizes the safety of the system that's in place, and you might not be able to know that.
Because that was a question that night. There's some people were concerned that, well, we're letting out too much information.
Too much, yeah.
And I assure you, from talking to the chief and talking to Scott, that not all the details were put out that night.
No, absolutely not.
But, but there was another gentleman, I think, in the audience, you were behind him, I think, who said, it's actually kind of good to get some of this out there for anybody watching us to say, hey, listen, they're not just a soft target. There actually are things that are going on over there to keep the kids safe now, so.
Well, even the communication about at that point, that was where you guys had the meeting with the middle school, or was it the whole school where the chief came?
Yes.
And there was a lot of
That was the
confusion
middle
about
school.
the middle school. So there was a lot of confusion about that, and there was, that meeting gave people with questions a lot of clarity about what actually happened there. I think it's important to continue that, and I thought it was, for as small as the population of people that came, I thought it was a pretty effective meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to handbooks, we'll invite up Mrs. Cabral first, who's going to do a review of the middle school handbook, and then Mr. Souza, who will do the high school handbook. So please welcome Christine Cabral, middle high school assistant principal.
Welcome.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
I think everybody has the proposed changes linked in Drive.
So I guess I'd like to start by acknowledging the many teachers this year that were interested in joining the handbook committee. We had Morgan Bardetti, Karen Booth, Dana Calderoni, Maria Calvo, Tom McLean, Trish Winslow, and Brian Wachowski met with me after school. Most people attended. We had 3 different meetings after school. We plan to meet until the job is done, so we met for 3 afternoons. I'm not going to go through, as you look through the changes, a lot of it is just like page references, typos, some update in like 2017, or just changes in dates and calendars. So I'm not going to go through all of those small changes. Talk more about some policy and procedural things. At the bottom of the first page, we talked about just information for parents regarding forecasts and where those are available. So teachers in the past used to hand out a weekly forecast to their students. Most teachers don't do that now through the use of technology, and the students having access to Chromebooks. Most of the teachers only post the forecasts online, so we have the handbook read that way. And then on the next page,
Is that 6 through 8 now? Because 6 did agendas this year, right?
that was the agenda book.
Yeah.
Right, so this is just like the paper forecast of what the
forecast,
lessons
okay.
are going to be. But then on that same page, on page 8, it references Jupiter grades. So we have that to include that teacher forecasts are available on Jupiter grades, so people know where to find them. On page 13, we're going to delete the MCAS exam schedule. I don't know why it was there to begin with, because it's the high school MCAS exam schedule. The middle school has a window of time, so we don't know exact dates yet. Those will be determined later. And then pages 15 through 17, we got the revised copy from central office as to who our district coordinators are. So just taking out that old version of it and putting in the revised from September. So then we can turn through several pages. Again, it's just typos. When I get to page 24, or actually page 26, and I'm reading the page numbers as they are referenced in the handbook. We're going to change the way students are allowed to access Chromebooks from the library. just to help with the flow, some students, like the students just show up at the library to ask for a Chromebook at any given time, and it's just to make it a little bit more organized. We're going to ask that students have a pass from a teacher that just is really proof that, yes, the student needs to access a loaner Chromebook at this time. And then once the student gets the loaner Chromebook, they can keep it with them throughout the course of the day and return it to the library before the end of the day. So we just added that to read, students will only be allowed to borrow a Chromebook or iPad with a teacher pass, verifying a need to borrow the device, and then students must return the device to the library by the end of the school day. Right now, there's really no policy in place. Students just show up to get one when they feel they need one. So we'll reduce gaming a little bit, possibly.
Is that students who forgot it or something? Aren't
Students
they,
who
they're
forgot them,
one-on-one,
or students who have sent them out for repair.
Okay.
There's some extra Chromebooks available in the library that they can loan.
Okay.
Okay.
And do they sign it out? Is that how it works?
Yes, yeah. And then also on page 26, this is several, you'll see this several times throughout the revisions. We added at the beginning of our code of conduct last year, our PBIS, school-wide expectations and rubrics about be respectful, be responsible, be the best we can be, and we defined what that looks like in the library, what that looks like in the cafeteria, the hallways. So the teachers felt like they liked that, and they wanted to use it more. So it still will read at the beginning of the code of conduct, but in addition, for example, on page 26, library guidelines are in page 26. So they said, well, let's put it there as well. So now it's in two places in the handbook. We also added to, in the handbook where the cafeteria rules are in place and outlined, we put that PBIS rubric in the cafeteria area as well. We put it in the bus section, and we put it in the technology section. Then on page 28, we added pajamas are not allowed to be worn to school. I can't believe we've gone this year long without that being clearly defined in the handbook, but we've added that. And then on page 36, there was a lot of discussion about allowing students to use their phones in the cafeteria. And we've decided, honestly, the middle school students are very respectful of our phone policy and usage. Not to say they don't get taken away once in a while, but for the most part, the students understand they're not allowed to use their cell phones in their classroom. But with the increased use of technology, the increased use of Chromebooks, and kids having more access, we wanted to trust them with the responsibility of allowing them to use their phones on their free time. So when they're in the cafeteria in the morning at breakfast time, if they want to take out the phone, they can use it. If they want to use it during lunch, they can use it, but still maintain the policy as far as it is in the building and the classroom. I think high school gave the kids more responsibility. Their use of technology, I think it's worked out okay. We'd like to try that with the middle school students this year as well.
Geez, the only way I could do that when I went to school is if I had a pocket full of quarters.
I know, right?
We're still dimes when you went to school.
Still
What are you talking
yeah,
about?
I'm not that old. I might look it, but I'm not that old.
So then on page 39, this is not a change in policy, it just reads wrong. Tardy to school, the change, it reads currently that Saturday detentions will be issued for every fifth additional tardy, and that's not accurate. We just do office detentions when we're monitoring attendance, so that's just an error that needed to be fixed. Then on page 53, Mrs. Hawley has notified parents recently, and we wanted to read the policy for dismissing students from school, that a photo identification is required of any person who's dismissing a student at the time of dismissal. So we're currently practicing that right now, and we wanted to make sure that was noted in the handbook. And then the final change is the change in the backpack policy. Currently, middle school students are encouraged to bring their things to and from school in a backpack, and they're to leave their backpacks in their locker throughout the course of the day. The exception to that would be when 7th and 8th grade students who have lockers upstairs come downstairs to an allied arts class at the end of the day. We allow them to bring their backpacks just because it just makes sense. They're not fighting the traffic to go back upstairs and get their things at the end of the day. So there was a lot of discussion. First, we asked staff how they felt about having middle school students carry backpacks. Lot of different responses to that. So then we started with 8th grade teachers, because the 8th grade teachers really wanted to allow their students to carry backpacks. Their rationale was 8th grade students go over to the high school side of the building more often than, like, 6th graders don't do it at all. 7th graders might do it for a study, but 8th grade students are in high school hallways for science classes, for math class. Some of them go over for art, for study, for foreign language. So you could spend a great part of your day in the high school where high school students are allowed to carry their backpacks. The teachers struggle with, they say, the kids are late for class. Because their lockers are on the other side of the building. So they thought it would reduce that. They feel that they're organized enough. So the teachers wanted to allow the 8th grade students to carry their backpacks. So they created a Google survey, sent it to just teachers of 8th grade students, and the vast majority of them voted in favor of it. So then we said, okay, so it was successful with them. We sent the same survey out to 7th grade teachers, and 7th grade teachers did not want the backpacks as the same as 6th grade. So that's why we're proposing the change just to read for 8th grade students to be able to carry their backpacks with them if they want to. They would also have the locker available if they chose to store them.
Any questions, comments?
Quick question on dismissals. I'm just thinking out loud here. Let's say I get Celtics tickets and I show up at 1 o'clock and want to take my son and dismiss him. I'm just like, if I didn't have the note in before 8, I'm just reading it directly off of here. Is this like something I can't do? How does this work?
No, yes, of course you can.
Okay.
I guess if you know in advance they have it, it just helps with the management of the traffic in the office. So if you know your child has a doctor's appointment at 1
Yep.
o'clock and you're going to be there at 1 o'clock, if they bring their notice down in the morning,
Okay.
we will get them a dismissal note so that they just show their teacher, say at 10 minutes of 1,
Yeah.
they get to leave class. We have them in the office ready for you at 1 o'clock when you get there. So that's the convenience of having the note. It helps the parent, it helps the office manage.
Okay.
But yes, we frequently get phone calls from people saying they're on their way to get their child.
Okay.
Not that they just won Celtic tickets, but.
Well, I just threw that out there. But so it's not I just was thinking out loud.
If
It's not seen as
you
a
showed up, no one is going to deny you access to your
No,
child.
but not even.
But we will ask you for your
I know,
photo
but I would
ID.
think, am I going to get a hard time that I didn't follow the exact procedure? Is what I'm more or less saying, because in here it reads, you're required to bring a parental note to the main office before 8 a.m. So I'm just saying, if you didn't do that.
I'm dating myself a little bit. I know Mrs. Simmons sometimes would remind people of that policy. Or say something like, if you had brought a note in, they would be here. But
That was
no,
so
we
nice
don't,
of
we don't keep you from,
Okay, just making sure, just reading out loud.
Andy? Just on to get back to our last topic, on the, where you're bringing up backpacks here, has there been a discussion about clear backpacks in the school for security purposes? You would probably know.
No, there has not. To my knowledge, there's not been a formal
Oh,
discussion.
no, I know
about
it's
clear
been a kind of a trend around the country a little bit.
Some parents have raised that concern to me, so they've contacted me directly. I don't know if they've contacted individual buildings, asking if we're considering clear backpacks. At this point, as a school safety measure, we have not. It's obviously something we could look at, but it's not an official proposal at this time to require all students to have a clear backpack.
It just reminded me, just looking at this topic, so I just figured I'd ask, since we were on it. Other than that, no, I don't have any other questions.
Well, on that context, I think if this was a school policy, I could see this change, but I don't know. I mean, I have concerns with it being one grade that's changing like that, and I understand the context because they're in the high school. But it seems to me like they're also in the middle school a lot. And it just seems kind of ambiguous with who a student is and what they're doing with one grade doing it and 2 grades not doing it.
Right, I know some 6th graders that look like 8th graders. That could, you know,
Well, I don't know. I mean, I know they do it at the high school, but it's 9 through 12, right?
yeah.
So you're looking at making it a school policy for 1 grade. And I think I have concern with that.
Can I ask a second?
I'd rather see it be a school policy or not, I think, as opposed to allowing 1 grade to do it when they're mixed in the building with the same students.
What's the typical time of tardiness of students for going back to their lockers? What's the typical, a few minutes?
A few minutes, I would guess.
Would it be, so you think maybe we shouldn't do it for all grades, or don't do it at all?
It sounds like there's some contention as to where this is at right now, so not everybody's in full agreement except for this grade or that grade.
Well, and I think that, obviously Mrs. Cabral took that factor. This came forward because some of the 8th grade teachers were saying, we'd like to see this change.
Right.
So I think the change is here really in support of the 8th grade teachers wanted to see it.
And I will say that the 8th grade teachers have taken it upon themselves. They really have been operating like a team this year. That was their professional practice goal. They've been working, communicating a lot, meeting after school in their own team time. So I do think this was something that they've struggled with this year, and this was a way to resolve that for them. But I hear what you're saying. Because I think developmentally, everyone would argue that a 6th grader cannot manage a backpack. It's too heavy, it's too cluttery, they can't walk around them in the classroom, they're an organizational mess, and they can't manage their stuff in there. They need more organization and more structure, and they're younger. So I can see why 6th grade would not want any part of it, but understandably, 8th grade is walking the hallways with high school students more regularly, and they want that for them. Kind of like we're going to give them the responsibility of managing their cell phones in the cafeteria and see how they do with that. I think 8th grade teachers are kind of advocating for their students because they feel it's appropriate for them. But I understand your concerns too. And I was open and honest with the teachers when I said, I will present this change. I don't know what's going to come of it. I didn't know if you'd approve it or not, because I've thought you would have concerns or might have concerns, but I also want to respect the teachers and their request, and I hear why they feel it's a need. So,
Do you think there'd be any type of complaining or blowback from the kids in the younger 2 grades? Like, they can do it, why can't we do it? And would you find yourself kind of trying to police the other kids that are just walking down the halls because they're seeing the other ones do it? You see kind of it be more of a,
I think 6th grade is so separate that it will be a non-issue in 6th grade. They won't even know the 8th graders are carrying backpacks. 7th grade, I don't know.
I mean, I would trust in our professional's opinion on it, but if, that's up to the committee. But if it could always come back to review.
Yeah,
If we-
these are up for yearly review. If it doesn't go well,
Yep.
they'll pull it out.
What do you think, James?
I think if this is what your staff is looking for, I'd want to support your staff. I think I would maybe look for an update on how that might be going and if there are any things that arise or come from that, only because I think it can create a conflict. Because it's at the high school, I understand the point of view and why they would do that, but I don't know, I think there's a little grayness there with 1 grade within a school being able to do it and the others not. I think it's almost creating a conflict. But, again, if this is the majority of staff's desire to ease and make it better organizationally for the students, then I would support that.
Now, Christine, the teachers that were against it, did they really state why they were? Did they give you was there any reasoning? as to why they wouldn't like it?
I,
I was just
no,
curious.
Well, I think
no,
you-
so
but I
no one
think
was
you
vocal, like nothing's coming to my
Okay.
mind.
I think you stated a lot of the reasons, though, organizationally with sixth graders and even with a lot of seventh graders, and I might contest even with a lot of eighth graders to an extent that, you know, how many kids are just gonna take stuff and stuff it in their backpack and move on, you know? As opposed to an organizational technique to move things, but they have so much as Chromebook now these days, right? What is the big context of having the backpack to be able to bring back and forth so much? Binders or like what?
Binders, but you're right, a lot of it is the Chromebook, and the teachers felt like the Chromebook would be even safer and that was part of the discussion in suggesting this, that it was safer being carried around in a backpack. I don't know if that's true or not, but that was discussed.
Yeah, I mean, to me, you're just, I don't think backpacks should be worn around schools. I just don't think you should be allowed to be carrying backpacks around schools, especially in the days, and we're having meetings for safety and violence in schools.
Ultimately, that's
And
an
we're just
issue.
increasing backpacks being carried around.
Right, and that's not an issue, obviously, it's not an issue that it's not an issue we're addressing at the high school level right now, so Mr. Souza's presentation isn't gonna
Right.
push for the elimination of backpacks. And but it is an interesting question, it is a school safety issue that people have brought to our attention. There have been parents who've reached out to say that they either think we should have clear backpacks or kids should not be allowed to carry their backpacks during the school day at the high school level, which would be a huge cultural shift. It's an interesting thing, I always just look at perspective. Really, in the last 10 years, that's been a huge change. 10 years ago, kids used their lockers. And more at high schools, kids don't use their lockers at all.
10 years ago, kids had books.
They don't use their lockers and they don't wear coats.
Right.
So
They don't wear coats.
Long time.
Right there.
And to my context, I guess that's why I could kind of drift that way, because their lockers are pretty useless.
Well, there's also the issue, we have the issue within our own building, and not saying this is the rationale, but we do have an issue of our lockers are small, they're narrow, they don't fit modern backpacks real well. There's a lot of problems with them in terms of functionality. They probably need to be replaced. I'm not saying that's a rationale to say every kid should have a backpack instead of using their locker, but I think that's played into part of our reason why students use their lockers a lot less than they used to.
I have a question about Chromebooks. I don't know if we spoke about this. Do the Chromebooks have a protective case? Were they issued when we bought them? Was there any type of protective?
No, they do not have a case.
So if
students
they
receive
drop,
the
there's nothing
Chromebook.
like that? Okay.
Right, students just receive the Chromebook, it does not come with a protective case. All right, so this is a lot of discussion on 8th grade backpacks.
Yeah, well, because I've had a lot of people ask me and message me and share their concerns. People have lots of questions about it. So I have a 6th grader, so I know that she sometimes will struggle getting to her locker, but her locker is in a classroom. So, but she, always has her binder. Trusty binder.
But I mean, ultimately, as Christine said, she's presenting this evening because this is what the 8th grade teachers wanted to do. Really, the idea came from them, and the school administration is supporting that idea from the teachers. So, that's why we would support it, and I would support it. And it can
I guess
always,
I'll
if
just
it's
ask
not
the
going
committee
well,
real
it can
fast.
always
So,
be.
when you guys were bringing up concerns, you use that word. I just want some clarity from you guys. What is that concern? Is that concern that the backpacks will create animosity between the 6th and 7th graders, that they're not getting the same entitlement as the 8th? Is that what the concern is?
That's not a concern of mine.
No. I'm asking
No,
the committee because
Just on my point,
it was brought up, there was concerns, and I'm just trying to understand what the concerns are.
well, just with me, like I said, my only question was, do you think it might cause a little bit of some strife, a little division between the grades? Because one grade can do it, the other ones can't do it. You know what I mean? So that, like James said, but like I said, I trust in the teacher's opinion. If they want to try it, they think it's necessary. I mean, I would, if that's what the board wanted to do, I'd be for that. Then maybe we could go back and look at it in the beginning of next year, after a month or two, see how it's going.
I'd like to follow back. My concern, Andrew, is really the fact that it is one grade doing it as opposed to a school policy.
One school.
If it was a school policy, I wouldn't have any question about this at all. But to allow one grade within a school to apply that, it just, I think the thing that makes it okay for me, again, is a lot of these 8th graders are going to the high school, and it is acceptable at the high school.
Okay.
So if it wasn't accepted, again, I'd go back to that. I don't think
We have
backpack
that
should be allowed at all,
grayness.
but.
The nature of us being at 6 through 12 middle high school has some of those gray areas
Yeah.
in terms of things
Absolutely.
eighth graders can do that maybe eighth graders at other schools can't do because they're in a 5 through 8 middle school.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
So-
can I just say, I think the kids would be okay with it because it makes sense. Like, if you can explain to them the rationale behind, it's not just we're making this rule to make this rule and make your life difficult. The rationale is eighth graders go over to the high school, sixth graders you don't.
Yep.
You know, and your lockers are here, your lockers are in your classrooms, some of you. You know, it just, the same reason why we made the exception years ago, if you're coming downstairs to an allied arts class at the end of the day, bring your backpack with you. So we bent the rule because it made sense to bend the rule. So I think if we gave this a shot and see how it goes next year and let the eighth grade carry their backpacks, if it doesn't go well, then we change it up.
Change it, yeah. Any other questions or concerns on anything else? I'd
No, good.
take.
Nope.
Take a motion, I guess.
All right, so yeah, we need a motion to
Take a
approve the
motion
middle
before
school
we vetted
changes.
all that out, but
Okay, so that's it, right?
anybody can throw one out there. I'll take a motion from anyone. Anne Marie, you wanna make a motion?
I'm about ready
Somebody's
to.
got it.
What, are we making a motion to discuss
Accept-
that one
to-
though?
No,
To
approve
approve
all
all
the
the
Okay,
changes.
so we're,
Approve
do-
all
Middle
the
high school
changes.
changes.
The,
Right, so that-
Middle school handbook changes.
Middle school.
that one right there, we don't
Approve
have
the
to,
backpack.
if anyone wanted to alter that, they should just have their piece out now. and-
No.
Right, they should-
Yes,
right, so
we're
someone wants to-
accepting all
If someone
changes.
wants to say, I'm not interested, I don't want to do the
No, I'm
backpack
for
piece,"
it,
they should
so
say
I
it.
just
So
wanted to
we're
make sure
accepting all
everybody got
changes.
there.
Motion for all changes. Yeah.
Are you good?
Yeah, I mean, I can, yeah,
Are you sure?
that, yeah. I mean, I agree with you. It's a middle school, so I kind of feel like it should be the same.
But I guess to Andrew's context, you
Yeah,
don't
I'm fine
have
with
questions
it.
on
I'm fine
anything
with
else?
unbundling it. No,
Okay.
I'm good with that. I'm good with everything else.
I'll make a motion to approve the changes of the 2018-19 middle
Middle
school
school.
handbook.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous.
It's okay.
Thank you.
Actually, I didn't.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think that's okay.
Three,
Yeah, it's gonna be 3-1.
3-1.
3-1.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. I spoke up.
Alright.
I'm not afraid, James. Don't worry.
all right, thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Cabral.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Souza, for high school changes.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So
How are
sort of like Mrs. Cabral, the first section of my updates are sort of housekeeping. There's a lot of directory information, some calendar information, testing dates and things like that, different page references. So I don't really see the need to go through all of them piece by piece. We do have some sort of policy procedure things. The first is on page 22 regarding mid-year exams. We didn't have anywhere written in the handbook a policy for how students were to go about making up those exams in case of absence. And it was particularly problematic because for students in semester courses, once those mid-year exams pass, they're no longer in that class, they're in a new class. So if they were absent, it can get challenging to have them make that up. So we just wanted to make sure that there was a statement in there that the students do in fact have the opportunity to make that up, and that they need to make those arrangements as soon as possible when they return to school. Our next is regarding honor roll, and specifically high honors. We noticed that our high honors is different than most every school surrounding us. In just about every other school, high honors is a grade of 90 or above in all courses, without the exception of one class that could be an 85 or higher. So we would like to remove that stipulation and make it so that our high honors is a grade of 90 or above in all classes. Page 35 was sort of a strange one as I was reading through. So there's paragraphs B, C, and D. Paragraph B, this all talks about the procedure for if a student is assigned an in-school suspension. Paragraph B talks about the administrator making an attempt to notify the parent verbally, and has a statement at the bottom, if you're unable to reach the parent after making and documenting at least 2 attempts to do so, such attempts will constitute reasonable efforts for purposes of orally informing the parent of the in-school suspension. And then you go down to paragraph C, which starts talking about sending a letter and notifying them in writing, but the final statement is that same statement as in paragraph B, about if you've made two attempts without reaching them and you've documented those attempts are reasonable efforts for purposes of orally informing the parent, which seemed a little strange to me because a letter doesn't orally inform anyone of anything. And then there's paragraph D that just talks about sending that letter. So there's sort of two paragraphs about a letter, and in paragraph C, there was that extra statement at the end about orally informing people. So after review, paragraph C has no information that isn't contained in B or D. So I'd like to propose just removing paragraph C and making paragraph D the new paragraph C. Sorry if any of that was confusing. It's a lot of C's and B's and D's. Moving on to page 45, our student organizations. I just wanted to update some of the groups that we do and don't have at school. So our French and National Honor Societies have combined to be really one body. So they wanted to have that sort of represented in the handbook that way. Our GSA is transitioning from the Gay Straight Alliance to the Genders and Sexualities Alliance in an effort to just be more welcoming to students who don't identify as gay or straight and maybe looking for another welcoming environment. And then in addition to our interscholastic athletics program, we also have a unified sports program that we wanted to make sure was represented in the handbook. Speaking about activities in the handbook, pages 46 and 47 talk about essentially our policies that have to do with extracurricular activities. We actually would like to move from what's in the handbook right now to a document that is paralleled with our athletics. So it would change to the Carver Middle High School Code of Conduct Guidelines for all extracurricular activities. Most of the information is actually the same information. We just wanted to format it so that it was consistent from athletics to extracurricular activities. And also we thought that there were some good practices going on in the athletics program that we thought would benefit our extracurricular activities. So in the eligibility section, there's really just some more specific language about which report cards determine eligibility and when exactly that happens. Under the absences heading, there's some extra language there about if a student's absent on a Friday, they need to get permission to participate in whatever's going on over the weekend. And then we wanted some language to represent what our practice is, even though the language wasn't currently in the handbook, that if a student is dismissed or tardy and misses more than half of the day, they are considered absent, and at that point, they also wouldn't be permitted to take part in whatever activity there was that day. And then there's another additional is the unexcused absences from practices, and that should say events, not games. I apologize, I'll edit that. There's also some added language about bus trips, just to make sure that when we are having any events where our clubs or groups need to go off campus, we're ensuring that all the students are taking the bus there, taking the bus back, unless some other plan has been approved by the principal ahead of time. And then there was a statement in the athletics document about insubordination. We thought that was important really to support our advisors and encourage our students to be the best they can be. Beneath that is the chemical health guidelines, and that is exactly the same information that is currently in the handbook. So that part of it is not a change. Then we go to page 50, which is now back to interscholastic athletics. And again, we're making our language align with our practice. And this language was on that code of conduct document that we used as a template for our activities code of conduct. But for some reason, it was different in the handbook than it was on that code of conduct. So we wanted to have those things run parallel. And it talks about if a student's absent on the day of a game, and also gets into if you're dismissed or tardy and you miss more than half of the day, you're considered absent and you wouldn't be able to participate that day. Next is on page 56 in our attendance policy. Our current policy says that in order for an absence to be excused, there needs to be a note upon your return to school. We've had some issues this year with doctor's notes coming in very, very late, a month, 2 months after the fact. And we looked at this policy and we said it's hard to enforce. It comes in the day you come back, or it doesn't come in at all, and we don't accept it. So we felt like if we extended that a little bit to 1 week, you have a 1 week window where you can pass that in, we felt like that would be a more enforceable policy in order to not have students at the end of a semester bring in a stack of 12 doctor's notes that didn't exist the week before. And then my final change is actually one that was already talked about by Mrs. Cabral, and that's our library policy regarding signing out Chromebooks and just having to have a pass from your teacher validating that you need that Chromebook.
Questions?
I have one about the doctor's note.
Yes.
My kid's old doctor's office stopped giving out doctor's notes completely.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah. So it became an issue for me. So they sent me an email just saying that, that yes, the child was seen, but it wasn't a letter. It wasn't on their letterhead. I guess you guys haven't come across that?
We haven't.
Okay. So it personally happened to me. So that's why I was
Oh,
it
absolutely.
made me think of it in that case. I guess if it comes up, you guys will have to address it at that point. But it happened to me. So they found it to be too disruptive to their practice, having to write all of these doctor's notes. So they simply stopped issuing them, changed their policy. So.
Yeah, but I would think if we received an email saying the student was seen in my office today, that would
Yeah, they
constitute a
didn't
note.
want to
Usually
do
it's
that. They
that
did
would
that
consti-
begrudgingly.
that
That
would
was like, don't
constitute a
ask me
note.
again. This is it. I won't do this again type of thing.
So you guys get emails of acknowledgement?
No,
We haven't experienced
We
that,
haven't
no.
experienced, I'm just saying,
She was
They
saying,
wouldn't
I'm
give
saying,
me
I'm
no-
sure,
Fax them, you'll get a fax or something. possibly, or-
we've gotten faxes in the past.
I'm saying if that came up and they would only email us, maybe we would consider that.
I might have is the 1 week present, or is that what you're adding?
So we would be changing upon your return, so the day you return,
Yeah,
to 1 week.
1 week, okay,
It's reasonable.
okay.
I just had to ask because I was floored by the whole
Yeah,
thing. So
I've not encountered that before.
I had a question going back to the insubordination.
Yes.
Everything else, as you went through it, seems to be consequential, where this one just ends with saying it will not be tolerated. Like, what does that mean? It will not be tolerated.
That's a fair question.
Do you know what I mean?
Maybe there should be an addendum there that just says, students engaging in this activity will be subject to discipline per the school's code of conduct.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
More, it just seems ambiguous that way.
Right.
So I guess that would be my only question as I went through everything else.
that's a good point.
Because everything else seems consequential. As you go through, it says, this will happen, or subject to the consequences as described in code of
Sure.
conduct. So I maybe just request that language there.
Absolutely.
Scott, you might know the answer to this. The change for the eligibility for extracurricular activities as far as the maintaining of C-minus average, the changing to the wording that it will be without failing more than one course is the difference between what it was last year and what it would be going forward, correct? That would be the major difference, because the reading up here is you have to pass your 5 majors, and now this is saying without failing more than one. So you would have the
It's always been the policy if you can't fail more than one.
Oh, I didn't see it up there. That's why I'm mad.
Right, and language-wise, you're right. The language currently in the handbook says the C-minus overall academic average with passing 5 for the extracurricular activities.
Versus athletics.
Right, and one of our goals in making these parallel is to be able to do that calculation of eligibility one time, so that there's not a student who found that one weird situation
Yep.
where they'd be eligible for one and not for another.
Gotcha. So, and now the change would be, it would allow, you could fail one course.
One course, right.
Okay, so that's the change there, and that aligns more with what the
Athletics.
the other schools currently, correct? That's why we're making that move, is that why?
So the goal behind making that move for us, honestly, I didn't look at extracurricular requirements at other schools. My goal was that within our school, I wanted our students to have one set of standards for whether they wanted to be involved in athletics or whether they wanted to be involved in drama or whether they wanted to be involved in
Sure.
whatever club.
But this, I'm totally for it, but
Yep.
that was the change, and
Yes.
I think that aligns us more with what the other teams in
Yeah.
the leagues do. So, great, thank you.
Andy?
I have a question on not a change, but existing
Okay.
text. Having read this, on the chemical health guidelines for participation in student organizations.
Yes.
Under C, you have the paragraph about random drug testing may be used at the discretion of the administration. Failure to take a drug test may result in loss of season participation. It goes into extracurricular activity. I don't see anything here about, and maybe it's somewhere else, but I don't see anything here about parent notification or consent for having the kids be tested, which oftentimes is with the drawing of blood, urine, or hair sample.
Sure.
Is there such a portion here with parental
The
notification?
parental notification of is when you signed off that you read the handbook and you're acknowledging of all the rules in it. The language there is actually consistent with the MIA policy for chemical health. So the MIA policy calls for a chemical health policy in which you can randomly drug test students. It's not something the district has ever participated in. So, I mean, it's an interesting piece because you could say, we don't really do it, why take it out? But it's a nice piece to leave there, and it's also, the reality is it's the MIA policy. So it's just, the MIA policy states that you can do random drug testing of students. And my answer in terms of where the sign-off is just acknowledging every student and parent has to sign that they've been given the handbook, they're aware of the rules in the handbook, and they're acknowledging that they're aware of all the rules in the handbook, which includes that you could have random drug testing for drugs or alcohol. Though, yeah.
Okay.
Mark, I don't know if you have, Mr. Stewart, I don't know if you have a different response.
I do not.
No, I understand that point. I mean, I think you're right. If they sign off on it, they should read the whole thing. But I still think if I was a parent of a child that's going to be drug tested, I would like to be at least notified, if not have my consent to do so, beforehand. But that's language I'd like to see in there, but that's just me.
Yeah, and the only piece I'll add on that in terms of the MIA policies, the school, we agree to participate in MIA athletics. We have to meet their minimum standard. The school can have more rigorous standards than the MIA. So actually, our overall eligibility policy is more rigorous than the MIA policy. The MIA policy is past 4 major subjects. Ours is more stringent. It's 70 average and pass 5 and can only allowed to fail 1. So you can have more intense policies, but you can't have less intense policies. So in essence, since this is the MIA policy, it's in our handbook because it's there. And I understand your concern about it. I can't imagine that we would do a total, well, it's one of those things. What's the concept of a random drug test? Is that people don't know.
You don't know what's coming.
Yeah, well, you don't have to,
Right.
well, you wouldn't have to inform the student, but if the parent said no, then there is your penalty that you're not going to be participating, or your student's not going to be participating any longer. But it is still their personal being, their personal right, and their child's personal right. I mean, they are their steward, their parent, their guardian. I would like to see that added. I mean, that to me, that's going over the minimum, and to give them the option. I'd like to see parents have more rights to that than less, because it's their children. It's I'm glad it's never had to be used. But that first time it does have to be used, then we're going to I think we'd have a firestorm on our hands.
Well, you're saying has to be used, Andy, but again, it's a random drug test. It's not like necessarily because something occurred. It's just they could hold a random drug test when they want to hold a random drug test.
Right.
So it's the right to be able to do that. Not necessarily, oh, we heard something about this kid, so let's do a drug test. That's different.
That would actually not be a random drug
Exactly.
test.
That's
So-
my point.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean?
And
Oh, I
so,
understand, but-
the theory of, obviously the goal of MIA putting this in their policy is to say, it gives the school the right to say, we're gonna put all the names of the teams in a hat, and we're gonna pull out the baseball team, and the baseball team's gonna get drug tested. And then bring those kids in and randomly test them. Honestly, it's not a policy that it's nothing we've ever done. It's nothing I think that we're intending to do. But it is part of the MIA policy, so it's in our handbook. Because we can't necessarily remove that piece of the MIA policy. But I will say that we have drug tested students, and when we have drug tested students, their parents have always been involved in that discussion, and it's always been based on a specific incident. So we've had the ability to two drug tests. We've had the ability, actually, we recently found that there's an alcohol test. We can actually test substance, see if it's alcohol in it. And none of those things happen without the parents being fully involved and have full knowledge of it. And if the parent refuses to participate, then we say, we're gonna make decisions based on the information we have. And we don't have that information, where the test could clear you, but now, if you refuse to participate in the test, then maybe it can't clear you.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
There's
so
pros and-
I
pros
guess
and
I'm saying
cons.
that, I just don't see this as, something we need to rewrite the policy on, because it's just not something we're gonna, actively pursue. I'm not saying we'd never actively pursue it, but I just can't see us going in that direction. We're maintaining it because it's part of the MIA policy.
Right.
So that's really the end, we're falling back to, that's why it's being maintained.
Now, you say like the MIA, if they want to take the whole baseball team and do it, they relying on us to do it for them?
Correct.
See, then it is part of our responsibility. So the way I look, if they're gonna do it, they have authorization to do that, that'd be fine, that'd be on them. You know, and they could deal with the parents and the parents' dissatisfaction. If this was me, like I said, it's never been done, but just because something's never been done, doesn't mean we should not look at it, you know, and maybe consider something different.
You can have a new principal in athletic director who would decide to do it.
Well, so, I mean, wanted to bring it up because I just think that's something that maybe the committee could look at, and we might want to change the wording of it.
So a thought I just had is if we went to a model where when a student signs up for an extracurricular activity, they're handed a copy of the Code of Conduct Guidelines for all extracurricular activities with a sheet that has a student and parent signature. Is that something that would work?
I would rather see that
Yeah.
than changing the wording of the policy.
Which they actually do for athletics.
I was thinking they must
So-
anyway.
So
right?
for
adding
athletic,
that step for
So-
extracurriculars. would be-
Absolutely.
Okay, well,
be a good-
athletics,
a
they
good
do
point.
do that, though it is now, like all things, I believe it's an online process. So the parents don't actually get the
Have to.
form in their hand,
Okay.
and they are told to read the policy and accept it. And I don't know. I don't know if parents read that policy and accept it or not. Like many things in the digital age that say, you're checking off that you're acknowledging this policy.
Right.
I'm sure that many parents just go through and check it off because it's actually an online system now that we use. We used to actually give them the paper copy and they had to sign the paper copy. When we gave the paper copy, they still may not have actually read it. But there was a better chance that they got the paper copy. If it was 2 pages, they would scan it and look at some of the things that
Right.
it said.
well, can we go back to that, this one issue?
No
it's
going
just
back.
not that big of
There's
an
no
issue.
going back to paper, man.
Huh?
No going back to
Sure
paper.
there is.
But I agree that we could add that for extracurricular. And right now, extracurricular, we do not have a system that's online. So
That
would
was gonna
have
be
to-
my
Right, so
next
yeah, this
question
would be
was,
this
do
would
we-
be paper-based.
This would be
Okay.
paper-based if we could do something for extracurricular.
I mean, I think that's a good suggestion.
Sure.
That would satisfy me, I think.
Is there something that's,
Right?
Yeah.
that's online?
Well, that's why
that
it's
you
good to
can
talk about this stuff.
potentially go to
we
do
doing it?
that for you?
Yeah.
Is there a system that we could potentially use online? Like, does MyRec have that ability?
For
Them to-
extracurricular, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a system we could use. We're not currently looking at one.
Just put a
Right.
So
giant-
we're not currently in the process of selecting an online extracurricular assignment.
Right. No, I'm just thinking like where we already have MyRec
could.
and that whole thing.
flashing
Like, could
red
that be-
thing online.
Could that be something that they could jump on? That's just my
I,
thought.
I can look into that.
So, I certainly know that we don't have, money to go spend on software. But I thought, well, we have MyRec. If there's a piece in that we're already paying for that might work for them, then that could be something worth
Well,
looking
I
at. So,
I want to
you.
thank the committee and Mark for listening to my concerns, and like I said, talking these things out, it's going to bring ideas forward, and we can maybe avoid some problems in the future.
Yeah, it's always an interesting thing to have that in the handbook because that whole concept of, we know we've never done it.
Right.
So that doesn't mean we shouldn't address it or talk about it.
Anyway, thank you.
So I think though any motion that's made, unless there's something else, needs to have some, couple amendments to it then.
I'll write those amendments down before I.
Well, one would be the insubordination statement
Yes, additional to that
and
paragraph.
adding that, it would be subject to consequences described in the code of conduct. I think that was how you wanted
Yep.
to end that, right?
So the insubordination piece subject to,
Adding the consequences as described in the code of conduct.
Mhm.
And then the second would be under the chemical health guidelines, section C,
would really be that the chemical health guidelines be given to students participating in extracurricular.
Extracurricular
Yeah.
activities.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get all of that?
Writing it down.
Or you could just motion to approve the recommendations that the school committee has made for changes to middle high school, to the middle high school handbook.
Oh, thank you, Scott. for doing that after I've already written it down. So I'll make a motion to approve the 2018-19 handbook edits with the
Two
edit,
suggestions made by.
with the suggestions by the school committee being added, please.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Anything else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That one's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Who knew
Mark,
the
very much.
policy amendments would be so controversial?
Right?
Yeah, they always are. The handbook, discussions are always.
Usually a
the most
long
lengthy.
conversation.
Yeah, they're always the most
Yeah.
lengthy.
usually a long
Changes
conversation.
to the
There's always
homework?
something that someone picks up along the way. Always happens. All right, so upcoming events, just want to give a list to the school committee of things that are up and coming. I'm not going to go through the list for you, but just these are kind of our end of the year events. So we'd love to see you participate in all of them, or any ones that you can. That would be great. I mean, I don't know if the committee wants to take some time to highlight any particular events. I know sometimes you do that in kind of at the end when we go reports from the school committee. So I don't want to. Like I said, I don't want to read the whole list, but I don't know if there's a couple things we want to highlight for the community of upcoming events. So I defer to the school committee on that, if there's anything you'd like to particularly highlight.
Nothing.
No?
At this,
I think
at
so.
this time?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I did have a suggestion, a question that I raised about the Memorial Day Parade, and whether or not the school committee would entertain marching in that parade, seeing as how so many students from our district march in that parade, and the selectmen march in that parade. So that was something that I wanted to mention.
Which I said, as far as I know, and I've been around, we've never officially done anything with that. I've been before,
Yeah.
but I would have no problem with anybody more. I won't be here on that day, so I wouldn't be able to attend, but I would have no problem with anybody who chose to march and represent the school committee in that.
I think, I know some of you making a formal request to have the group march who can.
Yeah, anyone who can, anyone who can. I mean, I march with Girl Scouts, but I was just speaking with the parade organizer, and I thought, gee, you know what, it would be great, because we have band is there, and they're, you know, so I just thought it would be a good thing to have. us
I am
represent.
unable to that day just because my son is marching in the Taunton Memorial Day Parade.
Nice.
And I'm actually responsible to get him there and get him home.
So it was just a thought that I wanted to share with everyone, just to put it out there.
So it'd be Andrew and I and Gina. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
You're gonna
I'll
be
be
the,
there.
you'll be the Girl
I'll
Scouts.
be there with Girl Scouts, yeah.
I'll be on the Cape at a soccer
Oh,
tournament.
so, I see how it's going.
So it's gonna be you.
I almost won,
But Stephanie, though, again, even to what Andy was saying earlier, any suggestion anybody brings up is
Sure,
never a
I-
bad
I
thing.
I like
you
the
know what I mean?
idea.
Yeah.
And I
like
do
the-
too.
Yeah.
But I think to your context, I don't, you know, if anybody chooses to march and represent the school committee at any point, I think it's a great idea. Anybody who's able to do it.
I mean,
Brad's in.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
Meredith?
think that if we could all,
Sorry.
I think if we could all do it, that would be much more of a
Yeah, if the
show of
group could do it
support.
as a whole.
Yep.
So maybe,
Next year?
I plan on attending, but maybe we can plan it early enough that we can be around on that weekend, you know, if the group wants to. I'd have no problem marching in it.
Just a thought.
Gotta start training. How long is it?
Not that long.
Alright,
They do a really nice ceremony after,
monthly building update.
right?
The building committee met on Monday, May 7th, and did a tour of the building. And it's just looking great. The inside is getting close to completion. And you should really start seeing the building come to life on the outside as well, because they're gonna start doing some of the plantings.
Front of the gym.
Yeah, they're gonna complete the front of the gym. They're doing some of the walkways. So I think really in the next month, you're gonna get more sense of the building, getting closer to its completed position. I mean, we're still on time in terms of all those pieces. You know, so we're on time, under budget. The project's moving along well. And as we've said all along, our pinch point really is gonna come over the summer of getting those buildings down and getting the parking lot in. And right now, we're not seeing anything that's gonna be a block for us, in terms of, successfully completing the building and turning it over on time.
Actually turning it over a little early, aren't we?
Yeah, if we can, we're trying to.
If possible.
Yeah, so we're required to turn it over on June 29th. We're trying to do it a few days earlier, give them a few more days to abate the buildings and get moving on that parking lot. So, and then just how I want to highlight the community, we have some upcoming events. The Fond Farewell is scheduled for Saturday, June 9th from 3 to 7. It's an event, it's an opportunity for the community to take one last walk through the GJC and Irwin K. Washburn buildings. As we have opportunities for photos, signing the walls, and tonight we talked about purchasing commemorative bricks and also photos. We're gonna do a photo of the school and have the opportunity for people to purchase that.
What a really nice photo of the school, because soon that will be gone. And it's a memory piece that a lot of people may want to have.
And if anything is, and any money raised from the selling of the bricks or the selling of the photos is going to go towards help defraying the cost of the grand opening ceremony, which we have also scheduled. That's been finalized for Wednesday, August 29th from 5 to 8. Brad, did you add a couple items in there in terms of item donation?
That's just to recap.
Yep.
We have vendors approved for the box and cafeteria item move. That's gonna be on the weekend of June 23rd and 24th, and the item donation is scheduled now the 25th through the 29th, but we're projecting if the crew that they're gonna have should be able to get it done in 3 days. But we do have the building officially to the 29th, but the goal is to turn that over, close the business on the 27th, and wash our hands, so it gives them a couple extra days to get in there and get moving on it.
And I don't know what we're going to do when we come back next September when we don't have school building updates on it. Because the building will be done, we'll be living in it.
There'll be plenty of other things, I'm sure.
I'm sure there are other topics let's talk about. But.
Maybe we could institute like a joke of the meeting.
Just to briefly point out, we met as that subcommittee for the Fond Farewell too, and Chef Portland's was there, so there was the conversation about the food that will be there, and should be a pretty nice event. The Carver PTO is as always, helping out incredibly in organizing and staffing and getting things needed for that event. But the menu sounded pretty decent from the conversation that we were having. The kids are a big part in helping that evolve, so he was listening to a lot of their suggestions and what they wanted to make and what they wanted to move forward with, so.
That's great.
All right, ready to move on?
I just have, do we have a date for the grand opening?
Yeah, it's Wednesday, August 29th from 5 to 8 o'clock.
Okay,
So it is the Wednesday night.
okay. Thank you.
So recommendations from the superintendent, I'd make a recommendation that we appoint Donald Williams to the Old Colony School Committee. The position was an available position for the Old Colony School Committee. It was posted as appropriate, and Donald Williams is the only person who applied. Donald is currently a member of the committee, so this is a reappointment. He'll also be approved separately by the Board of Selectmen. I know we had this discussion earlier in the year where we had a couple candidates for a position, and we looked at and found out the bylaw actually was supposed to be a joint committee of the Board of Selectmen and the school committee that would come together to look at candidates and appoint the position. Based on the fact that Donald is the only person who applied, and it was appropriately posted, and that it is a reappointment, the Board of Selectmen and the school committee, the Board of Selectmen recommended that, or suggested, that we don't necessarily have to bring that committee together
Yeah.
for the purpose of appointing the one person who applied for the position. So that we're asking for you to take separate votes tonight. So the selectmen will address it, and we'll address it, and Donald will be appointed.
I would take a motion.
So, quick question. Maybe I missed your statement on this. Was the deadline up for applicants on this?
Yes, so it has been appropriately posted, and the application time has expired.
Okay, all right, that's the only
And
question I had.
Yeah, and Donald is the only person who applied.
I'll make a motion to approve Donald Williams for the Old Colony School Committee.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 It's unanimous.
All right, school committee meeting scheduled for next year. We have some choices to make. Historically, we are the second Monday of the month, but sometimes that falls on holidays. So just in terms of preference. And then I guess I also wanted to ask one other preference question. which I didn't tell Emery I was gonna ask this preference question, so it's not listed there as a preference, is, would you rather meet in August? Would you prefer to meet the 13th or the 20th? Doesn't matter to me. I didn't know in terms of people's vacation schedules. Would you rather do, obviously, the 20th is the third Monday of August. But I just didn't know if people felt, I don't know what people's vacation schedules are, if the 13th is an issue, or the 20th could be an issue. It could be
I know for a fact I won't be here on the 13th.
Okay, and I'd prefer the 20th, so.
Anybody else? 20th okay? Stephanie, Gina?
Right?
20th of August?
August? Sure. Yes, that's fine.
Okay.
So August 20th?
Yep.
All right, so we'll move that one to August 20th. And then our other choices are October and November.
I would rather see the 5th in November as
Oc-
opposed to closer to the holiday.
October, want to do October 1st?
Sure.
October 8th is Columbus, it's the second Monday, but it is Columbus Day. So would you rather go to the third Monday and go the 15th?
Yeah.
All right, so we'll go August 20th, October 15th, and then I'm assuming that November the 5th or the 19th, that the 12th is the observed Veterans Day. Veterans Day is the 11th, which is a Sunday. When Veterans Day falls on a Sunday, it's observed on the Monday.
I prefer the 5th over waiting till closer to the holiday.
It's fine, yep.
November 5th?
Works for me.
All right, so we'll go, obviously, we'll get these dates out to everybody. You don't have to get them all on
Yeah,
your
I was
calendars
gonna say,
tonight.
can you resend
But we
that
just
once
had some
we get it?
questions for you to give some choice.
In that
For
window you
November
have
5th?
left?
Yep, so
20th,
August 20th, October
15th,
15th, November 5th.
5, and the rest, okay?
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then we just have a couple field trips. We have a field trip to Europe for next year. They're looking for approval. They're looking to go to
Barcelona.
Italy, the French Riviera and Riviera, and Barcelona.
Barcelona.
Excuse me.
Right, we need to chaperone that one.
And we also have, if you want to take them together, your choice, you can take them separately. You also have the Lady Crusaders who've had an annual trip where they go to the Presidential Mountain Range in New Hampshire and Six Flags. So it's an out-of-state field trip over the summer that Coach Rosen does as a team-building activity. So your choice whether you want to take the two trips up separately or together.
I'll make a motion to approve the Lady Crusader basketball trip and the field trip for the rich and the famous.
Reworded.
I'll reword it. For the field trip involving Italy, French Riviera, and Barcelona.
Second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any questions at all? Any other snide comments?
No, that's probably the best trip I've ever heard.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm actually jealous of them.
Italy's
I'm
amazing
like,
trip.
we need to go chaperone this one.
Yeah.
That's an amazing trip.
Well, my high school, we did Tangier, which is the Rock of Gibraltar. We did Madrid, and we did Italy.
That's nice.
So they threw in the French Riviera instead of Morocco.
Right.
But I think the school is on top, staying,
We did Lake Pearl.
We did France and England.
All right.
So,
Our
there's a private jet
last
involved
agenda item for the evening is budget transfers. We'll leave Brad for last for budget transfers for the FY18 budget to probably get us close to finalizing.
Yeah, so this will be quick. The last, hopefully, actually I say that, probably the August.
Probably one,
meeting will-
yeah, probably another one.
August meeting will probably close it all out. What we're doing here is, what you'll see is the actual whole budget document. The second tab over with transfer sheet, that's what you want to focus on. Meredith, can you tab to the transfer doc on that?
Meredith?
Meredith,
oh,
you grab the transfer
transfer tab.
tab?
Sorry,
It's all right.
I was being
A lot of
distracted.
small dollar amounts, you'll see a couple are for like 2 or 3 cents, just trying to close out payroll figures. The first one I wanna note is on line 16. This is teacher salaries for preschool. You guys know when we originally built the budget last year, we had roughly about $22,000 offset. We've actually been able to save on a couple account line items that will offset that, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna keep that money in the revolving account. And what that does is that gives us the ability as we move forward to be more aggressive on our projections. So if we are short on a given year, I have that 32,000 is what we're gonna look at right now to roll over. I have that to make up whatever we're short for the following years. So again, it's kinda like circuit breaker, you have a year to the good, And then if you're short on an aggressive year that you project out, you have the money to make up that given year. The lines 16 through 22, including the preschool, basically it's just a little bit of movement between a couple staff in the building, also some long-term absences that were unpaid. General, just closing out of those account lines. The next ones I want to highlight are lines 24 through 27. It's the teacher long-term and short-term subs and the classroom aides at the middle and the elementary school, middle high and the elementary. The middle high and elementary for aides, grants came in, especially 240, and Title I came a little bit, but they came in higher than what we were projecting. So there's a surplus in those accounts. That'll help cover some of the shortage we're seeing right now in the long-term sub account line. You're seeing we're gonna kick in 14,000. That's based on all long-term subs we have out right now for the, right now for absences for the rest of the school year. I'm projecting that's gonna fall right in the $35,000 range by the end of the year for encumbrances. Short-term subs, what I did is I took the last 4 payrolls of last year, did that math out to see what we're projected to spend this year. And if you kick that in, we're looking right around at a $36,000 left for the year encumbrance mark on that piece too. And these money moving these over should put us in good shape to close out the year, right on maybe a couple $1,000s here or there. The next ones are on lines 38 through 41. They're all transportation line items. One big thing we did this year was we consolidated a lot of our sped runs, and that's based on movement of a couple kids and looking at what we can join together. Obviously, we try to keep that within the 1 hour threshold. That's all we have to be able to keep the student on the bus. But there's been a couple that we used to have 2 routes that we were able to consolidate down to 1, so we did have some savings there. And hopefully that's an area we want to continue because that's more money we get to transfer into the classroom. Next ones are lines 54 through 59. These are utility lines. Natural gas, we were doing very well until mid-February, and that kind of fell downhill a little bit. So you'll see we're kicking in right around, let's see here, 3,500, or excuse me, 5,000 for natural gas at the elementary school, primary and elementary, and 3,000 in the middle high school. Again, this is based on the fact that we had a pretty bad March and early April, just based on the weather. Electricity, though, we did very well on. And even going on top of that, actually go back to natural gas. Next year, we locked in 25% lower for the supply cost, and that's a 3-year contract. So this number should drop off significantly as well, in addition to having a new efficient boiler at the elementary school. For the electricity, we did sign into a lower rate this year, so that's why you see there's a pretty decent savings in all those account lines. Again, what we did for next year's FY19 budget was we flatlined what we originally had budgeted for FY18. We just moved the numbers around to put more into the elementary line with the new electricity coming in there. Until we get a full year's worth, we want to maintain that number. After we get closer to the end of next year, that'll help our budget in terms of exactly where we're going to spend. Line 63 I want to mention because it actually helps next year's budget as well. This is the Plymouth and Carver retiree health insurance line item. Plymouth pays their health insurance direct. They bill back us a portion of that health insurance piece. And what happens right now is it's an aging population, so that number just decreases every year. So if you look at our budget for next FY 19, I think I put right around $73,000 again. We got this bill late in the budget season, so we kept that flat line. But this current year's expense was $61,000, so we had $11,000 free money to move around for FY 18. And FY 19, that'll help kick into our shortfall that we know we have for the agricultural schools. So that puts us in better shape for addressing next year's issue. And long term, it takes money out of health insurance line, which again puts money into operational costs that we prefer over health insurance.
You just said free money, dude.
Free money, you know, I mean, it's unallocated towards health insurance. Shouldn't say free money.
Right.
But again, puts it into the classroom where we all know that's really where we want to strive to put every dollar. Any questions on any of those?
That's good.
No, I'll make a motion to approve the budget transfers for FY18.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. Reports from the school committee.
I'll go first. I just wanted to thank everyone for coming today as far as the students. Jenna, I think I tell you every time you come, I'm really impressed by by what, you know, your presence and what you have to say when you come up here, and thank you very much for taking the time to come. And to Josh, you know, I saw Josh at Tyke Soccer and just talked to him about the fact that it's amazing watching you guys be willing to separate yourselves from the masses, and that's huge. And your ability to do that at such a young age is just going to translate to great things. So, and to Darren and Kevin, it's exciting to know what will happen next year. I mean, I got to see that on the Thursday before they went, and I was so impressed just with the presence. Their presence as juniors in high school, you know, you keep that going, that's the stuff in life, man. That's really big, and they were exceptional. So, just really, you know, excited to see where that goes next year. We got to put some trophies in the budget, maybe. So, but that's it. That's what I got.
Ladies?
I don't necessarily have a statement as much as maybe a concern and something to be put on the agenda for next meeting or another meeting. But a lot of parents and citizens are kind of questioning concerns about the fields or the maintenance of the fields. I guess they're not, or did you guys already address this?
Nope.
No. I guess they're not, and I don't know because I'm not at all the fields, I'm just relaying questions that I've had, is the maintenance and upkeep, like they're not being mowed, they're not ready for the games. And my question as a school committee member, when it was brought to my attention, is this something related to, can we bring in Dave Seidentop? Is this related to, we merged with the town and now the school isn't getting what it was used to getting? Or do you have an
It's
answer?
a combination of everything. I can answer that quick. It's a combination of everything, but I have scheduled a meeting. Everything got passed on to Will Scott and myself. I have a meeting scheduled with both Dave and Mike Schultz, and we're probably gonna bring the new groundskeeper in to, we've never had set days for mowing, and we wanna get something on a strict schedule that says, expected to mow this day. If it's a rain day, it's the day after. Something that's in writing that says this is our procedure on how we do this. With that being said, though, I know the complaint, and I'm already getting a little bit of pushback on, we don't have money to do this. So I wanna create a list of what we currently can maintain, what we do maintain, and also a list that says if we were to maximize all of our fields, this is what the cost would be.
So is that, instead of turning this into a conversation right now, is that something you can have to
For next
present for our next meeting?
We'll do a presentation on
Great.
our,
And actually, Brad and I spoke about this today, and I requested that we have a presentation on this issue for the June meeting.
I was telepathically picking
That was
everything
good.
up.
Yeah.
Good.
that was good.
Thank you.
Stephanie?
That's awesome. That was on my list as well, having visited many of those fields in the last week and having the same concerns. Oh, you weren't here, Jeannie, when we talked about, I think it was, a few people had said you were going to march in the Memorial Day Parade. You up for that, representing the school committee?
Somebody
I think
nominated
they
you,
volunteered her without her
Yeah.
presence.
I think
She's egging me on. You can do it.
I even said Meredith too, so it was just a joke. We talked about that while you weren't here, so I was just being funny. So, well, I thought it would be good if the school committee representative people were able to, so we had talked about if people wanted to, that they could. So I just wanted to encourage everyone in Carver to come to the Memorial Day Parade, because we are not going to have that word that's going to cancel it this year,
Oh,
right? We'll have to think positive thoughts. We haven't had one in a few years. Last 2 years it's been canceled, so
Do I get a sash?
absolutely.
All right. It's a done deal.
So I just wanted to mention that.
Do we have school committee sashes?
Do a tiara.
One of those by the morning.
Ooh, even better.
You're gonna earn a medal.
A scepter, perhaps?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Little sash, and I would be happy to be there.
So just a thought. And then I just wanted to reiterate, there are so many amazing events coming up that are celebrating our community and our students and our teachers. So I would just encourage people to try to fit some time into their busy schedule to attend some of these events and participate and show everyone their appreciation and support. So have a safe Memorial Day.
first off, I was very impressed by our students' presentations tonight, and recognizing them. They're very impressive, and I wish them all well, obviously, and success in their future. Also saying that, I want to wish everybody a glorious graduation day. I believe our next meeting won't be until June 11th.
Yeah.
Congratulations to all our graduating seniors. We're very proud of you, and we know you'll go on to really good things in the future. to the point of community events, I just wanted to say a couple words here about an event this Saturday over at the Carver Sportsman's Club. It's the Carver Sportsman's Club Annual Scholarship Breakfast that actually benefits some members of our community, kids if they apply. It's from 8 a.m. until 11 a.m. Saturday, what day is that? Is that the 19th? And for this year, I believe it's going to be on a menu basis. There's not going to be a set fee at the door. So you go and order, like off a menu at a restaurant. And they have all kinds of great volunteers over there. And unfortunately, I'm promoting it, but unfortunately, I won't be able to be there. But, well, I have to work that day. But I'll be there in spirit. I just want to urge everyone to go and support our kids' scholarships. And actually, two of the scholarships are for 2 seniors, $500 apiece. Another one is for $550 for 2 students to go to the tuition of the junior conservation camp in Russell, Massachusetts. And I just wrote down a little description of it. It says the camp introduces youth to ethical concepts and knowledge essential to a lifetime of properly enjoying our natural resources in leisure activities that depend on their careful stewardship. And I think it's sometime in August. So do you know more about that, about applying for that?
I do not, actually.
Oh, okay.
I was not aware that that was a specific part of this. I knew they did the scholarships for the graduating seniors. I did not know they sponsored students to attend the conservation camp.
Yeah.
I honestly don't even know if they advertise that through us directly.
Well, that's maybe it's something we can talk to. Well, maybe I can talk to them about it. But if anybody is interested, I have a website. It's juniorconservationcamp.org. And you can go on there and get more information. All right. Thank you. That's it.
I would just like to, we've had far too many wars in our country's short history, and a lot of people are touched by Memorial Day and the events that occur, and hopefully everybody takes the time to make the remembrance that's deserved on that day for all the veterans that have given their lives to protect what we have. And in context to that, there's been a lot of talk about the students coming in here in this meeting, and this is my first meeting of my 3rd term on the school committee. And although there are lots of ups and downs that go along with this committee, the insights that you get of the incredible things that are going on in this school on a regular basis are fantastic. Every meeting we have, we always start with ups and all the great things that are going on in the school, and it's always incredible, the robotics and culinary, and I mean, the list could just go on and on and on of such a small town and all the incredible things that our students are achieving in this town. This committee is a great insight to see a lot of that and what's happening. So run for a committee, get out, get involved, be a part of something, because you'll learn things about our town that you never knew before, and I would highly recommend it to anyone. So thank you. And I would accept a motion.
I'll make a motion to adjourn to executive session to conduct strategy in preparation for bargaining with union personnel and to not return.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. That's a roll call.
Aye.
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 That's unanimous. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Have a great night.
Thank you.